In the empire of Larus, in the family of the ancient Aztane clan, lived twin sisters who possessed rare and truly exceptional talents. One of them stood out for her intelligence and outstanding abilities, astonishing everyone with her hard work. The other one suffered from poor health since childhood and could not withstand long periods of study. Naturally, they decided to teach only one of them, the one who could bear responsibility for the family. And yet, despite everything, the sisters loved each other very much. The sister, raised as a future heiress, adored her twin with all her heart. They treasured each other more than anyone else in the world. They had no one else to rely on because they lost their parents in early childhood. And soon their beloved grandfather, who had become their only support, also died. Lydia was forced to take over the family when she was only 18 years old and had no choice but to move forward. She lived with the belief that she was doing the right thing, for the sake of everyone dear to her heart, for the sake of her fiancé and her fragile, charming twin sister. Everything she did was for the two of them. But one day, opening the door, she froze, seeing them kissing. At that moment, her world collapsed right before her eyes. They both looked at her and smiled calmly. They told her that it was time for her to leave, and that she had no right to stay in that house any longer. Lydia couldn't believe it was her own sister who said that, and Erica just repeated that she should leave quickly. Now this house no longer belonged to her. Lydia turned to Erica, but she just laughed in her face. She couldn't comprehend that it was actually Erica standing in front of her. And Erica just stood next to her fiancé and continued to smile. Many of the companies and mines that belonged to their family were now in her hands, and Erica took all the enormous fortune, and even the mansion full of memories, for herself. She did not deny it, and said that it was all thanks to her. And thanks to the hard work of Lydia, who did everything possible. All Erica had to do was play the role of the mistress, and everything went according to plan. Lydia was horrified. Erica had even taken her fiancé, and she couldn't understand how her sister could do such a thing. After this, Erica kissed her groom again right in front of her, and then she looked at her again with a cold smile. Lydia didn't know what to say. The words stuck in her throat. She just turned around and walked away. She could hardly hold back her tears as she slowly climbed the stairs. She couldn't understand why everything turned out this way. Why did those she trusted suddenly turn against her? She couldn't even ask them that question. She just wanted to know when her sister started to hate her. When Lydia became the head of the family, she had no power, but she had a large fortune, and many looked down on her. She faced difficulties, especially when trading with commoners. But despite this, she went through a difficult path and did everything to preserve what belonged to the family, and ultimately earned respect. And her fragile younger sister always seemed harmless. But it was she who became the cause of all the trials, preventing her from moving forward. What did she want to hear? That everything came easy, without effort? Lydia didn't understand what all this was for, because she believed that everything would be fine if she did the right thing. She sought the right path and never did anything bad. After all, they are twins. Lydia is Erica, and Erica is Lydia. And Lydia believed in it. But now she realized that all her efforts were in vain. Then she remembered what her grandfather had told her when she was still very little. He said, "This door gives desperate people another chance." When her parents died, her grandfather tried to open it, but he couldn't. So if she ever feels unbearably hard, she can try to do it herself. She wanted to ask him for forgiveness. After all, she couldn't protect anything, and now she was in terrible pain. That's why she asked for help and tried to open that very door. When she took hold of the pen, she was sure that nothing would come of it. Having tried it, she was convinced that nothing really worked. These were questions, but she still got angry. She desperately wanted those doors to just finally open. She started screaming, remembering her sister and her husband. And I also remembered my grandfather, who said that he was never able to open these doors. She mentally addressed him, saying that if he was there, then let him open the door and show her this place. She wanted to be woken up and saved from the nightmare. And suddenly, she finally managed to open these doors. A bright light illuminated the room. She felt a light breeze and the scent of flowers. And then she opened her eyes and saw a beautiful lawn. Her grandfather stood there, calling her to him. The soft touch and quiet whisper made her smile. Lydia missed him so much that she felt like she was about to cry. Suddenly, she heard someone telling her to wake up. Otherwise, the wolves would drag her away if she fell asleep here. Then she saw her grandfather and froze in surprise because she could not believe that she was seeing him. She thought she was on Forel Hill. Then she decided that perhaps they were in heaven, and he really was waiting for her there. But the grandfather did not understand what she was talking about and said that apparently she was not fully awake yet. He added that Lydia had a good dream. Lydia was surprised and even asked again what he was talking about. Grandpa said it was time to go, otherwise she would catch a cold. When they were walking in the meadow, a little dog suddenly ran up to them. Lydia was surprised when she recognized Nara. An auntie told Lydia to hurry up. If this was a dream, then she could not imagine a happier dream. It used to be a dismal mansion that everyone had long since left. There she saw Aunt Misha and Uncle Robert. And at that moment, I realized that this was not a dream at all. She really did go back in time. In front of her stood a laid table and her grandfather, who was helping with the paperwork. When she was a child, she always asked her grandfather to help her with paperwork. She thought that these happy moments would last forever. But suddenly, my grandfather died after an accident. Then, 18-year-old Lydia became the head of the family. She didn't even have time to mourn his death. But now, back in time, no one knew what had happened. Grandfather believed that something had happened to Lydia. She had become too quiet, not at all like her former self. Lydia said that nothing special had happened, just some nonsense, not worth paying attention to. She wanted to tell him the truth at least once, because in fact, she had a nightmare. In this dream, she was betrayed by the man she trusted most in the world. And the worst thing is that she was unable to fulfill the last will of someone who was truly dear to her. She still missed him very much, even after all this time. He replied that everything was fine, and it was good that she woke up from this nightmare. He added that he would do all the work himself today, and that she should rest a little. He also noticed that her guest would arrive soon, and advised her to tidy herself up. Besides, Lydia was supposed to meet Erica, but now was not the time for sadness. If time really did turn back, then Lydia must find out, since when Erica had been harboring these dark thoughts. She walked up to the door and knocked. The sister allowed her to enter. Erica looked happy, as if nothing had happened. Smiling, she noticed that it was already getting colder outside. Lydia asked how Erica was feeling today. She replied that everything was fine. She was just tired of endless work. Her voice was soft and her smile was warm and kind. Erica managed to deceive not only Lydia, but also everyone else around her. Then she asked what was new with Lydia. Lydia replied that everything was the same as before. Nothing special. Then Erica added that she had heard about some guest arriving today. Lydia was surprised, and Erica reminded that Lydia herself was talking about someone very special. And Erica also noted that if Lydia knew such a wonderful person, it meant that she herself was special too. She said she was proud that Lydia was her twin sister. Lydia, hearing this, admitted that she did not remember talking about any guest. Then she asked Erica to have lunch without her today. She would prepare everything necessary herself. Erica couldn't understand why her sister suddenly started acting strange and distant, as if she was hiding something. Despite Lydia's surprise and coldness, Erica still agreed, not understanding why her sister no longer looked her in the eyes. Meeting the pervert and signing the contract seemed easier to Lydia than having an open, emotional conversation with her sister. From that moment on, Lydia's trust in Erica completely disappeared, and she could no longer believe a single word she said. Lydia was determined that she would never again allow herself to trust her sister, no matter how close she was. All the warm memories of the past, when the sisters were close, began to crumble, losing their meaning and warmth in her heart. They seemed to shatter into tiny pieces inside Lydia, leaving behind only emptiness and pain. When Lydia saw Erica again, a strong desire arose in her soul to ask since when and why her sister had changed so much. She tried to understand why Erica could commit such cruel acts, devoid of pity and explanation. Even after returning to the past, Lydia was unable to ask this question, leaving it hanging like a heavy burden in her heart. Now she has no choice but to find the answer herself. The atmosphere in the mansion had been tense for a long time. Lydia felt it in every glance and every step along the marble corridors. She had heard only passing mention of the guest, and this only fueled her curiosity. But Lydia still had no idea who exactly was supposed to arrive. Her thoughts were jumbled, and her heart beat a little faster, anticipating a meeting with someone important. Everything would become clear soon. They would see who this mysterious visitor was. Lydia sensed that something significant was coming and tried to remain calm. After all, having risen to head of the family at such a young age, she was accustomed to maintaining composure even in difficult situations. Her willpower commanded respect. Indeed, it seemed there was nothing she couldn't handle. She believed that any storm would subside if she maintained her dignity. In reality, she was simply trying to appear confident while hiding her anxiety. The words that came out of her mouth were more defensive than convincing. After all, another blow of fate awaited her ahead. A new traitor, about whom she did not yet know, but she felt the approach of disaster. When the door opened, Lydia almost lost her composure. Her ex-husband stood before her. His face evoked unpleasant memories. In that moment, she realized she had missed something important, as if the past had caught up with her, reminding her of old vows and pain. The husband approached her calmly and said that he was grateful for the invitation, as if there had been nothing between them that could have destroyed them before. Today was her 17th birthday, the day the man standing before her once confessed his love. He won her trust then, but soon shattered it in an instant, leaving behind only disappointment and bitterness. Now he had come again to propose. It was Marquis Yuri, the very one she had sworn to forget. Ambitious and respected by all, he already inspired admiration for his determination and cool mind. Moreover, he was her fiancé, who came from a family capable of influencing the fate of the entire empire and possessing untold wealth. When their families announced their engagement, the entire court was in talks. The union proved advantageous and received the approval of influential nobles. Yuri was a man of great ambition, and it seemed he had everything. Lydia thought postponing the wedding wouldn't do any harm. She wanted to believe that he could be trusted, because today was supposed to be their second meeting after he gave her the ring. Yuri said he was honored to be invited to the Freelay family home, and his voice sounded almost sincere. Then he handed her a bouquet, as if wanting to show that he remembered her every preference, every little detail. They were blue roses, rare flowers created by alchemy, and they glowed softly under the candles of the hall. Of course, Lydia knew about these roses in advance. She's not surprised by beautiful gestures. She'd long ago learned to see the calculation behind them. He spent a long time choosing a gift, wondering how he could impress her heart again, but the alchemical flowers only reminded him of the falsehood. After all, no artificial beauty can compare with the living feelings that no longer remain between them. She felt awkward at the whole ostentatious ceremony. Every glance felt like a test, and every smile like an obligation. Lydia's grandfather, trying to lighten the mood, joked that he was jealous of Yuri's relationship with his granddaughter and laughed, hiding his sadness behind a smile. The Marquis replied that, of course, he had not forgotten about the Viscount and had also prepared a gift, maintaining a polite game of propriety. After this, Lydia came out to the guests, trying not to show confusion, and said words of greeting, restraining her emotions. Yuri was visibly surprised to see her. He said he'd heard about her illness and was glad she was able to come out to greet him. Then he added that he had prepared a special gift for her, a shadow of memories of the past flickering across his face. It was a red rose, a symbol of their former love, which now seemed only a reminder of something that could never be returned. The red rose suited the girl perfectly. Its delicate shade seemed to reflect her shyness and gentleness of character, reminiscent of a fluffy ball. Lydia felt grateful, and he noted that he had heard about twins in her family, as if the little secret had now become clear to him. But unexpectedly, both sisters turned out to be so magnificent that the beauty of each seemed to intertwine, creating an impressive, dazzling image. A scene of her sister passionately kissing her ex-husband suddenly flashed before Lydia's eyes, as if that moment had burst from the past and come to life. She felt incredibly ill. The memory squeezed her chest, and the feeling of bitterness and betrayal literally paralyzed her thoughts and body. She started coughing, trying to cope with her anxiety, but her grandfather couldn't understand what exactly had happened and why she suddenly started coughing. He assumed that Lydia had fallen ill, not realizing that the cause of her condition was not physical at all, but emotional and deeply personal. Grandfather didn't ask what happened, leaving her alone with this internal, stormy flow of experiences and memories. Lydia ran away abruptly, as if she wanted to escape from herself, and no one around understood what exactly made her disappear so quickly. Grandfather tried to call out to her, but Lydia was already out of reach, her steps disappearing into the corridor, leaving behind an uneasy silence. She locked herself in the bathroom, hiding from the whole world, and her grandfather anxiously asked if everything was okay and what could have caused such a condition in his granddaughter. At this time, her sister Erica arrived and asked why Lydia had locked herself in the bathroom, as if trying to understand her strange and unexpected behavior. Lydia herself could not understand why she had not noticed her own reactions until now, as if what was happening around her caused her strange surprise. After that, she opened the door and walked out of the bathroom, carefully returning to reality so as not to attract unnecessary attention and not to reveal her feelings. Lydia apologized, explaining that she was feeling unwell and asked to be allowed to go to rest in order to recuperate and come to her senses in a calm environment. Grandfather confidently said that she could rest, and in the morning he would ask the maid to move the medicine so that she would be more comfortable and at ease. Erica asked if everything was okay with her sister, and Lydia, smiling, reassured her that everything was fine, that her condition was under control. Lydia knew she had to worry, but she also knew the situation would give her an opportunity to act, as memories from the past were returning with particular force. The night enveloped everything around in darkness, leaving only a feeling of loneliness when every step seemed cut off from the world and thoughts wandered in the darkness. Lydia felt betrayed, as if the cold hand of betrayal had touched her heart, leaving pain and mistrust in those she considered close. The two who had once been her friends and allies now seemed like strangers, and this feeling of disappointment and bitterness tormented her from within. She wondered if it had all started much earlier than she could have imagined, and how long she had been deceived and misled. But Lydia could not fully confirm this, remaining in a state of uncertainty where every fact required careful analysis and reflection. Now all that remained was to act within the limits of her power, and the first step was to eliminate those who interfered with her plans and stood in the way of her goals. After this, the grandfather knocked on the door and said that if Lydia woke up, he had food for her, carefully caring for her condition and needs. Lydia explained that she had woken up from some noise that seemed strange to her, and therefore immediately felt the need to get up and check what was happening. Grandfather apologized for not knocking earlier so as not to wake her, because he thought she was sleeping soundly and did not want to disturb her peace. He thought Lydia might be hungry, so he baked her favorite apple cake, hoping to lift her spirits and bring a little joy to her day. It would have been better if the three of them could have enjoyed the cake together, but the grandfather didn't know that his granddaughter was still sick, and her condition didn't allow them to share this moment. Lydia assured him that everything was fine, it wasn't his fault, and she appreciated his kindness, understanding, and care, which were evident in his every action and word. The Marquis spoke with him privately, explaining that he wanted a serious relationship before the wedding, so that the engagement would be genuine and promise a future without deception. No matter how much Lydia tried to escape her fate, her steps and decisions seemed predetermined, and she understood that it was impossible to completely avoid what was about to happen. She turned away to collect her thoughts, and her grandfather said that he understood her feelings, staying close and supporting her even in the most difficult and unpredictable moments. He wanted Lydia to be in charge of her own life, and insisted that he obtain her permission personally, without intermediaries. Grandfather Skari noted that, although he is often at home and is a good person, it is very important to him that Lydia's opinion is taken into account in any decisions. Lydia declared that she hated him, and her grandfather was shocked by such a frank admission, not expecting such a reaction from her. He realized that then they had no other choice and would have to act based on her position, no matter how difficult it was. She must have known he wasn't the type to take rejection lightly, and that made his determination even more palpable. Lydia admitted to herself that she knew about it, and mentally noted that he was a terrible person, causing her mistrust and fear. Come to think of it, she actually did receive an invitation, and she accepted it, although she hardly realized it. But Lydia didn't even know about the invitation in advance. It came as a complete surprise to her, as if it came out of nowhere. Around the same time, she had already accepted Yuri's marriage proposal, thinking about the future and a possible life with him. Yuri announced this with obvious satisfaction, demonstrating that he was pleased with her decision and was ready for celebration. One of the dukes, the emperor's cousin, had already become famous for his imperious character and ability to keep people in obedience. Lydia decided that this time, too, she would carefully read the situation, assessing every step and the possible consequences of her decisions. She realized that Yuri would also be coming to the event, and this made her think about how to behave in such company. So Lydia decided it was better not to go there at all, to avoid unnecessary clashes and tension. A new thought came to her mind that could change her decision and make her act differently than she had previously planned. Perhaps Yuri had only wanted to take possession of their wealth from the very beginning, and this understanding gradually strengthened in her thoughts. Of course, Lydia had no doubt about his family's authority and influence, but she felt deep down that Yuri's intentions were far from honest. He was clearly aiming to devour her family by exploiting her trust and position, and this made the situation especially dangerous for her. She understood that she had to break off the engagement, otherwise the consequences could be too serious and irreversible. This decision was not in her usual style, but she decided to at least try to protect herself and her loved ones. A couple of days later, she found herself in the Duchy of Burdean, observing the familiar yet still majestic scenery and atmosphere. Lydia looked very beautiful, and it had been so long since she had attended a ball that it felt completely different. Now she felt completely new emotions that filled her with slight anxiety and anticipation of events. After this, a male voice addressed her, and Lydia immediately understood who it was, feeling a familiar energy nearby. He remarked that she looked stunning today, and it sounded like a compliment, making her tense up inside. At the last meeting, she looked sickly, weak, and tired, but today her image was dazzling and attractive. Lydia didn't react at first, remaining calm and hiding any emotions under a mask of composure. He took a step closer, took a deep breath, and repeated that she was magnificent today, increasing the tension of the moment and the closeness between them. He then gently took her hand, creating a sense of intimate connection, conveying his feelings and intentions without words. He asked her to dance, expecting that congratulations and attention would be appropriate, as if it were a natural ritual of high society where every gesture is appreciated. Lydia thought that the gap between them was too great, like an invisible chasm, and no formality could bridge it. It would have been foolhardy to ignore his request, but in her mind, she remained determined, standing firm in her position and refusing to give in. Standing before the assembled aristocrats, hungry for gossip and sensation, she felt every appraising and curious face in the room. To make her decision clear, Lydia took her hand back, demonstrating to everyone that she was in control of the situation and would not allow herself to be manipulated. Every glance seemed to burn her from the inside, and she felt all these intent, curious, and condemning eyes focused on her every movement. After this, she looked seriously at Yuri, demonstrating the full depth of her inner excitement and concern about his behavior. She made it clear that the Marquis must realize how much his behavior disturbed her, and that such frivolity was unacceptable to her. Yuri did not understand at all why he was rejected, and this bewilderment only increased the tension between them. Lydia confidently stated that, as the head of the noble marquisate of the empire, she counted on his understanding and respect for her position. The scandal involving the head of the famous Marquis family and his disgraced granddaughter has been carried out in society, leaving shame on Yuri's face. He found himself in a position where it was impossible to save face in front of the nobility, and his every move was now subject to surveillance. Lydia politely but firmly said that with his permission, she would decline, emphasizing her independence and control over the situation. After that, she turned around and left, leaving behind her whispers and surprise from everyone present in the room. Rumors of her daring behavior will soon begin to spread through high society, as always happens when someone breaks established rules. They will say that the impudent girl from a famous family does not know her place, trying to put her in her usual place in the hierarchy. But Lydia was used to this, and these conversations were little different from what she heard when she first became the head of the family. Calculating profits and losses, she easily made decisions related to business and family interests without much difficulty or hesitation. But getting used to constant communication with people and public ceremonies was difficult for her. No matter how much time passed, it remained a test. And this man was familiar to her, and she knew that his presence in society always aroused interest and discussion. This is the Grand Duke of Burdean, known for his reputation and ability to be the center of attention without losing influence. The nobility loved to discuss people behind their backs. Gossip about him was even greater than about Lydia herself, creating a constant focus on his personality. Every word and assessment about him was surrounded by rumors, and now his attention was drawn to women who were trying to win his favor. He was under excessive attention from society, where women tried to attract his attention and affection by any means necessary. The empire, with its vast plains and resource reserves, existed only thanks to the patronage of two influential dukes who maintained order and power. One of the duchies is Burdean, a prestigious military family that produces guard commanders and generals, playing a key role in the empire's security. Lydia had not heard of any problems in this family due to the character of the head, Ivan, who remained true to his principles and honest with the people. He was never proposed to, as rumors about his attitude towards women were well known, and society was skeptical about the matter. He did not deny these rumors, and because of this, her own position in high society was threatened, and her interaction with business was limited. Many people tried to understand or forgive his behavior, but Lydia did not know what was true and what was rumor, and only guessed that he was tired of all this. But since he was a duke, Lydia was sure that everything would be fine with him because his status guaranteed a certain stability and respect. He was not what gossip and rumor had described him to be. Reality concealed a far more complex and interesting person. Only when their eyes met did Lydia realize how different the Duke's strength and charisma was from what others had told her. Lydia paused for a moment, thinking about her future, how her life would turn out, and what decisions she would have to make. She turned and began to walk further, feeling how each step took her away from her old doubts and old attachments. Yuri remained behind, not understanding why Lydia was acting so decisively and distantly, as if hiding something. Perhaps all the previous refusals are not yet enough to finally get rid of his persistence and interference. To finish off Yuri, she needs someone who will agree to her marriage proposal, even if it's just for show. But at the moment, Lydia had no suitable candidates for the role of groom, and this added to her anxiety. Suddenly, someone called her, and the sound of the voice made Lydia freeze, feeling the familiar tension. It was Yuri, standing in front of her, his gaze serious, as if he was weighing and considering something. He looked reserved as he asked her to wait, as if every word and gesture had meaning and could not be rushed. Yuri said that Lydia should stop and grabbed her hand, not letting her go further and restraining her movement. Lydia looked at him in surprise, asking what he was doing and ordering him to let go of her hand immediately. He insisted that she must agree to his proposal, promising to let her go. Otherwise, she would try to escape again. Lydia firmly declared that she would never do such a thing. At that moment, the Duke appeared and asked what she was doing in someone else's garden. His tone was stern, without pleasantries, and he felt he had the right to demand an explanation of what was happening here. He asked what exactly they were doing there, watching the tense scene between Lydia and Yuri. Lydia, seeing the Grand Duke, was completely confused, not understanding why he was there and what the purpose of his visit was. The Marquis also began to sigh, feeling that the situation had gotten out of control and required explanations and intervention. He admitted that there had been a misunderstanding, trying to soften the situation and explain his presence. The thing was that their engagement was about to take place, and now his chosen one was slightly offended by him, but it was not critical. Lydia categorically stated that this was not the case at all, and the Duke noted that such behavior looked strange for lovers. Lydia considered such words to be complete nonsense and had no intention of taking them seriously, remaining firm in her feelings. The Marquis repeated again that Lydia was not indifferent to him, trying to prove his opinion despite her indignation. Lydia was furious, unwilling to believe that she had ever trusted this man or felt even the slightest sympathy for him. She didn't understand how Yuri dared to treat her like that, putting her in an awkward position and demanding her consent to marriage. Indignation grew inside Lydia. Was she really supposed to put up with such an attitude and accept his conditions in this life? She pulled her hand away, pushing him firmly, showing that her patience and trust in him was completely exhausted. Yuri became furious. His gaze became sharp and threatening, as if a memory of the past had come to life again. The look was reminiscent of when he kissed her sister, bringing back a storm of memories and disgust. To Lydia, he looked like an ordinary insect, insignificant and not deserving of trust or forgiveness. The Duke, who was watching what was happening, turned to the Marquis, clarifying the situation and demonstrating his confidence and authority. He said that, although he is younger, he will simply call him Yuri to bring clarity and certainty to the conversation. The Duke asked if Yuri knew what the Imperial Knights were primarily taught and what qualities were important to them. These knights are taught nobility, the ability to protect the weak and remain loyal to their country, which is part of honor. This is a matter of pride and an important part of being a knight, and the Duke noted that Yuri's current behavior was completely inconsistent with these principles. His actions and manners were contrary to knightly honor, causing surprise and displeasure in the Duke, because this is not how one should behave. Lydia watched as the Duke calmly expounded these truths, understanding that justice and honor were more important than personal whims. The situation was becoming increasingly tense, and it was clear that Yuri had to acknowledge his mistakes and change his behavior. The honor of the Duke's family was unshakable, and Lydia understood that any actions of the members of this family reflected their high status and traditions that must be followed. The Duke grabbed the Marquis's hand tightly, leaving him no chance to resist, demonstrating the strength and determination of his character. He made it clear that he wanted the Marquis out of his garden, and he did not intend to discuss it as advice or a request. It was an order. Yuri was amazed and frightened by how majestically and powerfully the Duke behaved. His calm strength caused genuine horror in the Marquis. Fear completely overwhelmed Yuri because he did not expect to encounter such firmness and determination that seemed unyielding. The Duke confirmed his order, declaring that the Marquis was obliged to leave immediately, leaving him no opportunity to retreat or justify himself. After the Marquis left, Lydia remained in the garden alone with the Duke, feeling the tension and the unusual atmosphere of closeness between them. She thanked the Duke for standing up for her, expressing her appreciation for his intervention and protection from an unpleasant situation. The Duke remarked that he now expected gratitude from her, hinting that actions had a price and required respect or recognition. His words implied more than simple gratitude. He expected a symbolic payment for the service rendered. Lydia didn't understand why he was acting so strangely, and it seemed to her that there was something familiar but incomprehensible in this behavior. Her thoughts couldn't help but return to the pet she once had, the Duke acting like her dog, demanding attention and recognition after patrolling. He seemed to want to be petted and have his merits acknowledged, as was done with a faithful animal, which surprised Lydia. She couldn't understand why this memory had come to mind now, and it evoked a strange feeling of mixed surprise and nostalgia. Lydia imagined how she could gently stroke the Duke, feeling a strange combination of embarrassment and almost childish fantasy. Realizing that this was impossible, she said that the Viscount's family never backed down in business, demonstrating their determination and respect. In her opinion, the Duke was interested to know how valuable help could be assessed in a situation where they had to intervene. Lydia asked if he knew who she was, trying to understand how deeply the Duke knew about her identity. The Duke replied that he was somewhat aware, but that this did not prevent him from showing interest, and Lydia wondered why he behaved so casually. The Duke's behavior was completely different from what she had seen before in his residence, and she was at a loss as to how to react. She addressed him, and the Duke ordered her to address him simply as Ivan, explaining that he did not like being addressed formally in private conversation. He was persistent about this, emphasizing that he wanted her to call him by his first name, without unnecessary titles and formalities. Lydia agreed, and the Duke remarked that it was sweet, showing that simple gestures could build mutual trust and ease of communication. He asked what was the matter, and Lydia replied that she would like him to call her by her first name too, striving for an equal and friendly tone. The Duke did so, observing the condition, and a relaxed form of communication was established between them, which gradually softened the tension. Be that as it may, Lydia was already grateful for his help and understood that this step strengthened their mutual respect and trust. She knew that the Duke came from a family of entrepreneurs who valued reliability and always fulfilled their obligations to others. In their family, duty and honesty were considered the highest values, and Lydia understood that the Duke's promises could be completely relied upon. She noted that when the Duke had decided on the price of the aid, he would be able to inform her, and that would be the final confirmation of the conditions. The Duke said the higher the rating, the better, showing that fair and generous compensation for his assistance was important to him. Lydia couldn't even imagine the amount we were talking about. Her imagination wavered between a reasonable and a fantastic amount. When he pointed to 2 with his fingers, she thought it was 2,000 gold, but the Duke clarified that only 2 would be enough, simplifying the question. She asked if it was enough to cover all the expenses, trying to understand his measure and assessment of the assistance. The Duke asked whether 1,000 would be enough if he wished, playing lightly with numbers and conventions. He then said that he was only joking, demonstrating his ease and lack of strict boundaries in personal communication, even in business matters. He reminded her that he had helped her in any case, considering it a knightly duty, showing honor and a sense of responsibility. The Duke called Lydia inside, and she was surprised that they would have to walk together, feeling an unusual and at the same time intriguing attention. She noted that there was an element of danger and gratefully extended her hand to him, agreeing to cooperation and trust. The ballroom was available for ball-goers to use if she wished, providing both convenience and safety. The Duke also asked if she had planned to appear in this form, anticipating difficulties and preparing her for possible trials. Lydia didn't understand how her dress had turned into this state. It was covered in dirt, and the situation required a quick solution. The Duke gave her his jacket as a sign of care and consideration, and Lydia tried to understand what character trait lay behind this gesture. She was unsure whether this should be considered delicacy or indifference, since the Duke was extremely difficult to read and predict. The next day, a servant brought the document that Lydia had asked for the day before, and she settled down to study it carefully, anticipating new information. The document was carefully placed aside, and Lydia sat down to read it intently, assessing the importance of the information and the consequences. Thanks to the Duke's help, she was able to escape danger the day before. But if Yuri still held a grudge, it could affect the safety of her family. Lydia understood that Yuri could have chosen to isolate himself if he wanted, which further emphasized the importance of support and strategic thinking. The situation called for caution and calculation, and the Duke proved himself a reliable ally, capable of securing her and providing the necessary assistance. Lydia reflected on all the events, realizing that the decisions made today would determine the future of her family and her own position in this world. Every word the Duke said, every reaction he made it clear that he was an unusual person, with whom his character and methods of action would have to be taken into account. Lydia understood that the upcoming decision could be dangerous, because Duke Ivan's character was complex and unpredictable. She mistakenly believed that there was at least a drop of human dignity in him, which sometimes gave her hope. If it weren't for the Grand Duke, the situation could have become much more complicated and gotten out of her family's control. Ivan knew a lot about her and her family, understood the intricacies of their situation, and the possible consequences of each step. He only asked for 2 coins, and Lydia couldn't understand why the document only contained information that was known to everyone. This was personal information. He was older than her and had a special title in the Empire, which made his influence significant. Having decided to study the duchy's budget, Lydia was shocked when she began to read the figures and details of expenses. In fact, the duchy's income had been declining year after year, especially sharply in the last 10 years, which was alarming. The main reason was the Grand Duke's enormous debts, especially in terms of his expenses and obligations. The expenses included not only the maintenance of the palace, but also the training of soldiers and knights of the Empire, which took up the lion's share of the budget. This indicated that the majority of funds were spent on maintaining the army and ensuring the military power of the duchy. Every year, they tried to develop military strength, strengthening defenses and uniting the northern nations, despite the difficulties. All this was completely different from the rumors about his debauchery and frivolous habits that circulated among the courtiers. She heard that Ivan never hesitated when it came to military support, even if the budget seemed limited. Lydia wondered if she had missed something, but the servant assured her that all the information was accurate and correct. The palace always allocated only a small portion of the budget to the duchy, limiting Ivan's powers and his orders. The Grand Duke personally visited several times, asking for increased funding, but his requests were often ignored. It seemed that they were trying to put pressure on the duchy through the budget, so that Ivan could not act freely. Lydia thanked the servant and noted that Ivan, as expected, knew more about the empire than anyone else. He was grateful for such a compliment, appreciated the recognition of her attention and understanding of his efforts. The concept of power remained ambiguous for him, balancing between duty, influence, and personal principles. Unable to provide sufficient financial support for the duchy to which he had dedicated himself for 600 years, he ran into difficulties. Out of fear of a possible rebellion, many decided to betray him first by imposing restrictions and chaining him. And then Lydia realized something, realizing the hidden depth of the situation and motives that had previously remained unclear. She suddenly jumped, and the servant, noticing this, asked what had happened, expressing surprise and concern. Lydia reassured him that everything was fine and suggested that he was probably just tired from the hustle and bustle of the day. She asked the butler to prepare the carriage so that they could go to the Grand Duke's house without wasting a minute. Lydia hurried, almost ran, feeling an inner haste and a desire to meet the Duke as soon as possible. The Duke allowed her to enter, realizing that Lydia's visit might be important and require his attention. Lydia noticed the disorder on his desk and couldn't resist asking why, surprised by such unusual carelessness in the usual strict order. He looked at her in surprise, and his face showed a mixture of curiosity and slight confusion, as if he had not expected her to appear at such a moment. The Duke asked whether it was really Lady Lydia in front of him, as if confirming her identity and high status, in order to make sure that his guesses were correct. Lydia wanted to talk a little, and he replied that he was just about to rest a little, seeing no obstacles to conversation and ready to devote his time to her. She offered to stay and placed a chair in front of him, demonstrating respect and a willingness to talk, showing that she was ready to conduct the dialogue with dignity and calm. The Duke made sweeping gestures as Lydia sat opposite him, demonstrating a relaxed and open dialogue without formality or tension. He asked if something important had happened today, or if she had only come to pay the 2 gold coins she had previously promised to return. Lydia confirmed that she had come specifically to pay off the debt, fulfilling her promise and showing respect for him and the established obligations. She took 2 gold coins from her pocket and carefully handed them to the Duke, observing all formalities and rules of propriety without allowing the slightest haste. Lydia explained that she wanted to repay the debt, emphasizing the fulfillment of obligations and respect for the Duke's position, demonstrating the seriousness of her intentions. He noticed that at times she was not at all like the typical representatives of a noble house, being distinguished by her freedom of character and courage in her actions. Lydia emphasized that they were business people, and that only fulfilling obligations was important, not status or origin, leaving formalities in the background. Winter had not yet arrived, but preparations for it were in full swing, requiring attention to every nuance of the palace and constant control over the organization of work. The Duke was busy with all the preparations, planning ahead and taking into account possible difficulties, despite the fact that the cold had not yet been fully felt. He noted that winter is the most difficult time for the duchy, requiring maximum preparation and constant monitoring of security and order. Although the border needed protection, it was much more difficult than it seemed, and it worried Lydia no less than the usual administrative and everyday problems of the palace. She came to take care of the soldiers who were shivering from the cold and to try to ease their suffering, showing compassion for those who defended the duchy. Lydia believed that everything was interconnected, so she decided to simultaneously solve her own problems and take care of the problems of others, without separating the important from the unimportant. He wanted Lydia to get to the point without long introductions, without wasting time on empty words, valuing every moment for solving really important matters. The Duke asked what exactly she was talking about, trying to understand her intentions and thoughts, which seemed complex and incomprehensible to him at that moment. Lydia couldn't understand why he was wary. His stubbornness was stronger than she expected, and this forced her to act more carefully, avoiding sudden movements. There was no other way out. She knew that she should not provoke him again and risk their trusting relationship, realizing that the slightest mistake could cost her dearly. She knew they were facing a serious problem, and how she acted would determine not only her reputation, but also the further development of events. He had a financial debt that weighed on him and affected all his decisions, influencing his actions and creating additional stress in any situation. In addition, the Duke wielded enormous power and influence, which made the situation even more complex and required Lydia to be careful and attentive in every step. The Duke noticed that she was mentioning things that were supposed to remain secret, and this surprised her slightly, showing that he was closely listening to her every word. Lydia smiled, showing confidence, and emphasized that in this world, it was almost impossible to hide anything. Secrets quickly became known, and secrets were short-lived. The Duke responded with a slight smile, as if acknowledging Lydia's courage and directness, but there remained an attentiveness in his gaze that concealed caution and thoughtfulness. Nevertheless, he inquired about what she was deciding on, testing the limits of her courage and determination, trying to understand how serious her intentions were. Lydia stated that she was ready to become the next head of the family, fully accepting responsibility for her decisions and understanding the consequences that may follow. The Duke remarked that he already knew of her intentions, showing that his awareness was not inferior to hers, and a tacit recognition of mutual understanding arose between them. Lydia offered him a list of families with large fortunes who could help them with their affairs, demonstrating the thoughtfulness of their steps and strategic thinking. A time of power and injustice had shattered the swords of empire, leaving a burden of debt that would stretch across generations, complicating any attempt to restore balance. Therefore, Lydia stated that she was ready to deal with this problem instead of the Duke, taking full responsibility for the consequences and possible risks. In return, she offered to have the Duke help her with her own tasks, which seemed like a fair and mutually beneficial exchange between them. The Duke asked if she really intended to cover his entire debt, testing the seriousness and sincerity of her intentions to understand the extent of her readiness to act. Lydia merely smiled in response, demonstrating ease and confidence in the negotiations, showing that her decisions were not subject to doubt and were thought out in advance. He asked if she was doing this to make him owe her again, trying to unravel the true motives behind her actions and the strategy behind them. She confirmed with a smile, showing that her calculations were careful and thoughtful, and that every step was verified and aimed at achieving a long-term goal. The Duke asked if she wanted to take control of his lands, testing the boundaries of the deal and the extent of the influence she intended to gain as a result of the agreement. Lydia replied that he would not have to pay the debt in money, which raised doubts in him and forced him to reconsider her true intentions and plans for the future. She explained that she meant guarantees that would ensure the stability and security of the transaction, rather than direct financial compensation, which made the offer unusual. So Lydia prepared a family check, which served as confirmation of her seriousness of intentions and a demonstration of the resources ready to support their agreement. She handed the check to the Duke, symbolizing trust, readiness for decisive action, and the fact that her words were backed up by concrete evidence of a serious approach to the matter. Lydia explained that only 3 such checks are printed annually, and a special stamp on the back confirms their authenticity. Past debts, government interest, and financial obligations had destroyed his budget and required intervention. The Duke could not understand why she was doing this, and her actions seemed unexpected and unusual to him. Lydia said she would pay him $100,000 in gold, offering a solution that seemed simple but meaningful. She intended to do this with one stroke of the pen, which surprised the Duke even more and made him think. She explained that it could be considered an investment, and he asked what kind of investment it was, waiting for details. Lydia replied that she would tell him later, when the contract was signed, leaving the intrigue and control over the situation. She was only Vic's granddaughter and wasn't supposed to be in charge of such large sums of money, which made her proposal bold. The Duke doubted whether she could actually provide such a large sum, testing her capabilities and resources. Lydia assured that $100,000 in gold was no problem, and she was quite capable of fulfilling her promise. It turned out that her family had been underestimated, and their fortune was much greater than others had assumed. He said that since he was not a merchant, he should not consider this stupidity, but it was important to understand Lydia's motives and goals. The Duke wanted to understand what she really wanted from him in order to evaluate their further actions and agreements. The document she had placed on the table earlier was an important contract defining the terms of future obligations between the parties. Lydia wanted the Duke to read it carefully, evaluate all the points, and understand that this was not just a piece of paper, but an action plan. The Duke was skeptical, as if he doubted the seriousness of the document and whether her words could be trusted. It seemed to her that he had already revealed his intentions, but an invisible wall seemed to have grown between them, which was difficult to overcome. Despite this, he looked unusually interesting, almost awakening in Lydia a desire for flirtation and light play between them. But Lydia needed to wake up, because she knew that the Duke was not in the mood for women and was not looking for a romantic relationship. And yet, the anticipation did not leave her. Her heart speeded up a little, thinking that an unusual situation awaited them ahead. He stated that according to the agreement, they would have to marry, given the formal terms of the document. Lydia confirmed that this is indeed written in the document, and that everything must be strictly observed according to the rules. She noted that if such large sums were freely transferred between unmarried people, it would raise questions and increased scrutiny. After this, Yuri became interested in the clause that protects the family from those who want to take advantage of their property or ideas. He clarified what they were talking about, and Lydia explained that protection extended from all sides, including possible cunning plans of ill-wishers. Anyway, nothing has happened yet, and if she voices it, people might think she's crazy. So Lydia said that the Duke must have heard about her family's many enemies, because she was the only one who knew all of this. He looked up and noted that the document actually stated that physical contact in marriage was not required. This clause made it clear to her that this was a contract marriage, which is now becoming increasingly common in high society. And once they've sorted out the details, if the Duke wants to remarry, Lydia won't stand in the way. In short, the entire essence of the agreement became clear to him. All the terms and objectives of the document were extremely clear and logical. Lydia carefully studied his reaction after reading the document, asking his opinion, and noticed that despite the many conditions, everything was perceived clearly, understandably, and logically without confusion. He carefully picked up his pen, preparing to sign the papers to formalize the agreements reached and make the process finally valid in the eyes of both parties. Lydia recalled that in her family, the art of contracting had always been a top priority, considering it the foundation of upbringing and a key skill for conducting business in the future. He noted that he himself had already managed to understand this, observing her attentiveness and ability to clearly explain the terms of the agreements, which spoke of Lydia's seriousness and responsibility. After the documents were signed, he realized that in order to fully secure all provisions and obligations, it was necessary to draw up 2 sheets at once so that nothing would be left outside the scope of the agreement. Lydia was sincerely grateful that he had been so attentive and had signed everything twice, appreciating his serious attitude to the matter and his understanding of the importance of each clause of the contract. She asked him to remind her of these details later so that they could discuss them in a calmer atmosphere, without rushing, pressure, and the need to make decisions instantly. He noted that he wasn't finished yet, but Lydia explained that there was no need to get married right now. This was just the first step, and the process would develop gradually, without rushing. At this point, only the engagement date had been set, formally cementing their intentions, but there was still time before the final decision, and everything happened at a calm and measured pace. The butler asked in a reserved tone if everything was all right with the Duke, carefully watching his reaction and slightly concerned about his condition, to make sure the man was not experiencing discomfort. The Duke was all flushed and remarked that the contract had in fact been written, perhaps in vain, causing Lydia to smile slightly. Yuri was worried about her family, but Lydia didn't think she would take the first step herself, leaving the initiative to the Duke, carefully assessing the situation. Moreover, the terms of the gold contract were precise and fair, not exaggerating, but merely confirming his intentions and promises. What he was about to offer Lydia was completely in line with her expectations and contractual calculations. As if their thoughts and plans had suddenly merged into one, he paused for a moment, remembering how Lydia had gone over every detail of the agreement in detail, and he sensed how seriously she had taken her preparations. The calm and confident expression on her face inspired confidence, imparting a sense of assurance and creating the impression that she was a person who knew her business. This state gave a familiar comfort, but at the same time, there was a slight feeling of deception because he understood how carefully Lydia had thought everything through in advance. A contract marriage meant giving up part of one's own future. But given the family's circumstances, the decision was difficult, though necessary, for both parties. He realized that he could easily misunderstand her actions and motives if he jumped to conclusions, and every detail of her behavior could be important and deliberate. Meanwhile, Lydia was already riding in the carriage, quietly immersed in sleep, but thoughts about upcoming events and the consequences of her decisions did not leave her, like a light but persistent background. Before traveling to the past, she looked through the newspaper and learned that the duchy had been destroyed and the title of Duke abolished. Lydia cried, thinking that it might be because of the long time, and by teaming up with the Duke, who was loyal to the imperial family, she might have overdone it. She couldn't sit back and watch the situation, and she was sure that the transmissions from men or other people were getting on her nerves. A secure contract became an offer that couldn't be refused, securing the interests of both parties and protecting their future. This was the most important thing in this situation, requiring maximum caution and attention so as not to miss out on benefits and safety. And this concerned what Lydia was best at, her ability to manage a situation and make strategic decisions. The head of the Astain family must always remember, a perfect lie is valued above all else, but the real truth always remains inside. Until the last moment, she must question every action and event so as not to make a mistake due to gullibility. Grandfather raised Lydia this way, teaching her to check everything and pay attention to details, not allowing her to relax for a moment. And that night, sitting in bed, Lydia realized that her grandfather was right, and this knowledge turned out to be very important for her future decisions. Opening her eyes, she thought that it was all a dream, because too many thoughts and experiences were piling up at once, confusing her. Her grandfather was indeed right. Until the situation was over, she should not question everything, but only key points and details. The next morning, her grandfather approached her and informed her that a letter had arrived that required her attention and immediate consideration. Lydia was very grateful to her grandfather for bringing the letter personally, appreciating his care and attention to important details. When she opened the letter, she immediately understood who it was from, because the style and handwriting were recognizable and familiar to her. She started reading it, and it turned out that the letter was from Ivan, with whom she had agreements and upcoming plans. The letter stated that several days had passed since the contract was signed, and the time had come to fulfill certain obligations. Lydia, as promised, will provide him with 100,000 gold coins, which will secure their agreement and financial obligations. In addition, she took with her several talented people who could help in implementing their plans and strengthening their positions. Ivan received help in his work, because they were partners and had to share the most important secret on which success and trust depended. He firmly promised that he would pay off the debt that hung over him, leaving nothing in case circumstances changed. Lydia sternly reminded everyone that everything would be according to the contract, emphasizing the need to strictly adhere to the terms and conditions without any liberties. He also heard that Lydia's family valued trust above all else, and he understood that any actions had to be honest and open. Living with debt was alien to his rules, and he was not used to taking on obligations without confidence in his own strengths and capabilities. Lydia noticed that he dressed especially for the future bride, as if showing respect and solemnity of the moment. But Ivan replied that this was not necessary, that such signs of attention were not obligatory for him. Nevertheless, he was grateful for the compliment and understood that such attention was important for Lydia and her family. From then on, Ivan sent daily reports, demonstrating discipline and precision, as he came from a family of knights with traditions. Frankly speaking, such an attitude could not be simply welcomed, but it showed his seriousness and responsibility. On the contrary, it was better to sit down, drink tea, and discuss everything calmly, without giving in to haste and emotions. The ducal family has served truth and faith for 6 centuries, passing these principles down from generation to generation. Even the Grand Duke came personally and asked for the rules to be followed. But these requests often went unheeded. They had no choice but to give their full support, understanding the importance of maintaining traditions and commitments. Lydia knew she wasn't much better at following strict rules and obligations, but she tried. In recent times, the Grand Duke wrote to her frequently, maintaining contact and paying attention to her actions and decisions. Lydia believed that they had a good relationship, although her grandfather was very worried when she announced her intention to attend the Grand Duke's ball. She assured me that there was no need to worry because she was already old enough to make her own decisions. The girl couldn't believe she had found her soulmate, and this feeling both made her happy and scared her. Lydia asked again, and Ivan noticed that the Duke sent her letters every day, filled with warmth and attention. But Lydia replied that these were more likely business or social purposes, since she had invested in the duchy and maintained order. Her actions were always aimed at the good of others, and not just her own desires. And she carefully kept this in mind when making every decision. Grandfather was aware of the rumors and gossip that circulated about the Duke, but Lydia believed that they should not be given too much importance. She was sure that even her dog would be able to appreciate all these conversations and speculations with humor if he could understand human nature. Lydia understood that blindly believing rumors was dangerous, because the Duke taught her to understand people and see the true essence, and not superficial manifestations. She agreed that it is important to focus on truth and facts, rather than fictional stories and gossip that can lead astray and distort judgment. The perfect lie was to conceal the truth so convincingly that no one would suspect deception or begin to doubt her words. To do this, it was enough to come up with a plausible story and carefully support it, hiding key details so that there were no gaps. Even if rumors arose about the Duke, they could not fully reveal his true intentions, character, and who he really was at heart. The Duke's preference for privacy did not at all imply secrecy. It was rather a manifestation of his habits and style of behavior, rather than secrecy. Previously, Lydia did not particularly enjoy balls, but over time she realized that they are not so unpleasant, especially when it is necessary to maintain status and traditions. At first, she was afraid to be alone, but gradually she realized that loneliness would not bring any benefit and decided to act more decisively and consciously. Her efforts bore visible fruit, and she felt grateful for the opportunity to learn, grow, and improve through participation in various events. When Lydia met the Duke's gaze, she saw gratitude and respect in his eyes, which strengthened her confidence and determination in her actions. From this experience, she concluded that one must not relax and must always remain attentive and careful in all matters, even in small things. Grandfather watched her reaction closely and asked what she said in response to recent events, trying to understand her inner state. Lydia said that nothing special was happening, but Grandpa noted that this week they would be moving to the main estate, where they would prepare for big changes in their lives. Lydia's coming-of-age ball was soon to take place, an important event not only for her, but also for her twin sister Erica, for which everyone was preparing with great attention. The coming of age of both sisters became the center of everyone's interest, and preparations for the celebration began well in advance, carefully considering every detail to ensure the holiday went perfectly. Lydia completely forgot about everything except the date of the contract, which remained the main thing in her thoughts and required special attention, determining her next steps. The Duke noted that Lydia would be the star of the ball, and that it was worth thinking about her outfit in advance, which would necessarily include strict black and bright yellow shades, in keeping with tradition. He added that her sister, as always, would be impeccably dressed, while Lydia should appear in a strict black outfit in order to comply with all the customs and expectations of society. But Lydia suddenly decided that this time she would do something different, choosing a bright and vibrant outfit that would break the usual norms and emphasize her independence and taste. She announced that this time she wanted to look bright and attractive, so that the attention of others would be directed at her, and so that her individuality would be obvious to everyone. The servant informed Ivan that the following week would be the ceremony marking Lydia's coming of age, an event which the Duke awaited with excitement, anticipating its significance and solemnity. The Duke anxiously inquired about the exact date, not expecting the event to take place so soon, and the realization of its importance caused him unexpected excitement and tension. He learned that the ceremony would take place at the main estate the following week, and an invitation had already been sent to him in advance, which added formality and official significance to the event. But the Duke declared that he had received no formal proposal, and this unexpected situation filled the servant with fear and a sense of impending trouble which he had not expected. Lydia proposed marriage without directly mentioning the coming-of-age ceremony, which seemed too cold and formal to the Duke, lacking the usual warmth and human softness. Although it was all just a contract, the situation seemed too strict and emotionless to the Duke, causing internal tension and a desire to understand Lydia's motives at such a cautious distance. He sent more than 5 letters trying to establish contact, but none of them received a response, which only increased his confusion, irritation, and sense of anxiety about the upcoming event. The Duke could not believe that Lydia had not notified him of such an important event, and he was determined to rectify the situation, to understand her intentions and ensure that everything went according to plan. The servant was frightened by his Duke's unexpectedly violent reaction, not expecting such tension and emotional upheaval in a relationship that had previously seemed calmer and more predictable. Lydia had not expected the Duke to be so stern and intimidating, and this immediately created a tension that she had to deal with sooner than she had expected. Lydia and Erica rode in the carriage, slowly gliding along the well-kept paths of the estate, feeling a gentle sway and breathing in the fresh air, which filled them with anticipation of the upcoming events. Grandfather noticed that they would soon be attending a coming-of-age ball, and this caused him particular excitement, since both granddaughters were simultaneously entering adulthood, full of new responsibilities. He planned to carefully prepare the estate for the celebration, and the girls had to hurry to choose outfits suitable for such an important and significant event in their lives. Erica felt a sense of impatience and joyful anticipation. She wanted to try on beautiful dresses and feel like she was in the center of festive fun, where music and laughter created a special atmosphere. She imagined the ball as a true miracle, full of joy, dancing, and smiles, where every moment would bring pleasure and leave vivid memories for many years to come. Lydia smiled, agreeing with her sister, thinking that the holiday really promised to be warm, beautiful, and memorable for both of them. Although inside, she already felt a slight anxiety. But to be honest, the coming-of-age dress was starting to irritate Lydia. It seemed too boring and old-fashioned, and in her mind, she was already longing for something more stylish and inspiring. The combination of yellow and black seemed outdated, and not at all in keeping with her taste, It looked heavy and did not convey her inner mood and character. Her own outfit was almost entirely black, and in it she felt expressionless, as if she were dissolving into the surroundings of brighter and more colorful images, devoid of charm. Compared to Erica in her bright yellow dress, Lydia looked dull and inconspicuous. It was difficult to tell them apart unless you looked closely, and this added to her internal discomfort. Lydia understood that at the ball she would be shrouded in the shadow of a black dress, while Erica would shine in yellow, like a bright angel, attracting the glances of all the guests and catching their admiration. Erica truly looked magnificent, radiating joy and beauty like a ray of light at the party, and everyone who saw her could not help but admire her grace and charm. Lydia felt modest and almost invisible. She felt that those around her would involuntarily compare her with her sister and notice the differences, which caused slight anxiety and insecurity. The event was perceived as a serious test. It was impossible to change her dress, although Lydia remembered that her future husband had once said that in his eyes, she was more beautiful than her sister, and this calmed her down a little. Lydia told the Marquis that comparing the twins was too harsh, since each person was unique, but he merely noted that this was his personal point of view, reflecting exclusively his perception. They truly were right for each other, and these words brought Lydia a feeling of inner peace, confirming the invisible but tangible connection that existed between them. Her fiancé was a bastard, and his opinion of her had special significance, despite all the conventions of society. So Lydia perceived his every word with particular reverence and attention. Many years had passed since he had last visited here, and the memories of those days continued to remain vivid in Lydia's memory, causing a slight sadness and nostalgia. The girl also noticed that they hadn't visited these places for a long time, and the current trip awakened old feelings in her, memories of warm moments when everything seemed simpler and more joyful. Erica climbed to the top of the hill to take a short rest and recuperate, enjoying the vast view around her and the fresh air that enveloped their small group. She apologized, recognizing that her condition had made others work harder than usual, and tried to ease their burden, at least verbally, demonstrating consideration and gratitude. The Marquis showed the way, and the grandfather gently added to Erica that she should not blame herself, because everyone would try their best to make things easier and more comfortable for her, given her weakness. Vinta was a small but prosperous land with a mild climate, where every day was a reminder of the peace, care, and measured rhythm of life inherent in this cozy corner of the world. But despite this, Erica's illness remained incurable, and even sunny days could not completely alleviate her condition, the worries and experiences that did not leave her. Lydia reflected on the thoughts that occupied her sister, trying to understand what exactly led to the events of the past and the destruction of some corners of their familiar world, which left a noticeable mark. Erica's inner experiences seemed like a mystery hidden behind her outward calm, and Lydia tried to understand the reasons for her pain, fatigue, and the emotions she did not show to others. The servants greeted the Viscount and his granddaughters with their usual respect and care, demonstrating the attentiveness and warmth that always surrounded the family during visits and outings. Grandfather asked the butler to take good care of the girls so that everything would go smoothly and no one would experience any inconvenience during the trip, and preparations for the ball, maintaining order and comfort. It had been a while since their last visit, and Grandfather carefully inquired about how Erica was feeling, carefully observing her condition and trying to understand if she needed help. Erica felt a little unwell. Her fatigue was noticeable in every movement, so the idea arose to head inside so she could rest and recuperate. Grandfather suggested entering the house, given Erica's weak condition, so that she would not overexert herself and could rest peacefully, gaining strength before further events. At this point, Lydia approached the butler with a request to perform a small service, demonstrating her usual businesslike attitude and organizational acumen that had always been inherent to her. She emphasized that she needed to take care of important matters that could not be postponed, especially preparations for the upcoming holiday, which required attention and precision in planning. The butler, who knew Lydia's habits well, immediately understood her intentions and was ready to help without further explanation, anticipating her steps and speeding up the preparation process. Lydia hurried to get the necessary documents and books, demonstrating businesslike determination and confidence in her actions, without wasting time on unnecessary thoughts and distracting trifles. Her workspace was already prepared, allowing her to get straight to work without unnecessary pauses, so that every action would bring results and save energy for future tasks. The butler was required to provide a budget for the ceremony to ensure that expenses were transparent and fully aligned with Lydia's plans, simplifying the approval process. Lydia noted that the budget had already been prepared in advance, and the butler simply delivered the documents, which significantly sped up the planning and allowed them to immediately begin calculations and adjustments. She was pleased with how everything was organized, but the memories of having to rush people to get everything done on time brought back a slight feeling of nostalgia. The butler, with a slight smile, reminded her that he knew Lydia's character and her habit of controlling every little detail well, so he had prepared in advance to make her work easier and support the process. Lydia thought his impression of her was a little exaggerated, but she didn't argue, realizing that this was a manifestation of care and attention to the organization, and not unnecessary criticism. As always, minimal amounts were allocated for expenses, and Lydia understood that she would have to ask for an increase in the budget so that the holiday would be held at the proper level and meet her expectations. She decided to multiply all the expenses by 10 to ensure a decent level of celebration, emphasize the significance of the event, and create an impressive atmosphere for the guests. Lydia had heard that the Count's banquet hall was beautifully decorated and decided to rent it, rewriting the invitations and adding solemnity to the celebration so that every element was thought out. Despite respect for the butler's plans, the budget was calculated taking into account the recommendations of the Viscount, who valued economy and tried to avoid unnecessary expenses when preparing for events. But Lydia firmly stated that this was her celebration, and if the allocated amount was not enough, she would definitely discuss it in order to improve the level of organization and make the celebration perfect. Otherwise, the reputation and investment could suffer, which would affect the development of the territory in the long term, and Lydia wanted to prevent any such risks. The ceremony's organizers began meticulously preparing for the performances at the coming-of-age celebration for the next head of the family, which Lydia was destined to become, so that everything would go smoothly. Lydia was the central figure of the celebration, and the impression the celebration and her personality would make on the guests, as well as the general mood of the entire event, depended on her actions. As the protagonist, she sought to close the distance with the unfamiliar nobles by displaying confidence and demonstrating her leadership skills during the preparation and the ceremony itself. The butler was slightly perplexed, not understanding how to react to such decisive and independent actions of Lydia, because before, she had been more cautious and dependent. The changes in Lydia were noticeable to the naked eye. Her confidence, ability to make decisions, and manage the situation around her earned the respect and recognition of everyone present. The butler, watching her, realized that her idea was truly remarkable because it combined practicality, thoughtfulness, and the ability to foresee the consequences of her decisions. After this, Lydia ordered that a doctor be found for Erica, a specialist not connected to their family, with experience and a good reputation, capable of assessing her sister's health objectively. She wanted a doctor who was independent and could act without pressure or family habits, so that Erica's treatment would be as effective and safe as possible. The butler noted her request with surprise, carefully inquiring whether Erica's condition had worsened, expressing concern in his voice as he understood the full gravity of the situation. Lydia explained that her sister's condition had not worsened, but she was looking for new treatment methods, striving for the best possible outcome, and exercising extreme caution at every step. She also insisted that the butler not tell anyone about her plans, especially her grandfather, wanting to keep him calm and not disturb him prematurely. Lydia understood that she shouldn't give false hope, and decided that when Erica's condition improved, she would tell her grandfather everything herself, so as not to disturb his peace of mind. The butler assured her that he would fulfill her request, immediately begin searching for a suitable doctor, and would act with complete seriousness, understanding the importance of her intentions. Now, Erica was living a completely different life, and Lydia decided to try steps she had never dared to take before, striving for independence and new solutions. Of course, someone might doubt her decision, and the idea itself might seem too bold for her sister, accustomed to the old order and familiar restrictions. Meanwhile, Erica watched in silence as her sister's behavior changed, marveling at her new approach and the inner transformation that was gradually manifesting itself in everything. The servants, noticing Lydia, greeted her with their usual respect and formality, demonstrating loyalty and readiness to carry out her instructions with due attention. Lydia wished everyone a good morning and announced that work would begin immediately, giving the process organizational and moral weight, demonstrating the seriousness of her intentions. After this, she began making comments, emphasizing that many tasks were only partially completed and the rest required revision to meet her high standards. She criticized the servants for their inattention and mistakes, demanding that they be more careful and focused so that all preparatory processes met her expectations. Lydia noticed that many were already exhausted and losing concentration, which made it difficult to maintain order and the required level of preparation. So she increased her supervision and more actively directed the work. Lydia decided to prepare gifts for all the guests attending the coming-of-age ceremony herself. She wanted every detail to be perfect and to delight every guest. She chose pocket watches for the men and elegant brooches for the women. Lydia hoped these gifts would emphasize her guests' attention and their high status. Even if the costs increased tenfold or even 100-fold, Lydia had no intention of skimping on details, believing that this was necessary for a prestigious and important event. She completely restructured the budget, demanding frugality and attention from everyone. Lydia didn't rely on the family's old habits, trying to personally oversee every detail. This time, Lydia decided to act independently, ignoring her grandfather's advice and instructions. She was confident that her own vision would make everything better. Her goal was to exceed the expectations of the nobles, to show them that she was capable of more, and to prove that she deserved respect regardless of other people's opinions. Even if Yuri tried to use cunning or intrigue, Lydia was determined to show that she was above his manipulation and would not allow herself to be controlled. She wanted Yuri to feel helpless, seeing her independence and ability to keep the situation under control, to manage events and people around her. At that moment, Miss Erica abruptly entered the room, attracting everyone's attention. Her appearance immediately brought a slight tension and liveliness to the atmosphere. Lydia offered to greet the guests, noting that she was meeting some of them in person for the first time. She tried to be attentive to everyone and create a friendly atmosphere. She emphasized the important place of her twin sister Erica, who now also occupied a prominent place in family life, complementing her presence and influence. Erica has always strived to stand out and make herself the center of attention in any situation. Now this quality has become even more pronounced, attracting glances and sparking interest from everyone around her. Lydia invited her sister Erica for a while to prepare together for the upcoming ceremony, paying attention to every detail of the upcoming event. She explained that Erica's body was still weak, and the preparation would not be easy, but the process would undoubtedly bring her sister some benefit and strengthen her strength. Erica, understanding Lydia's concern, of course agreed, trusting her older sister and ready to go through all the difficulties for the sake of the common cause. In Erica's presence, Lydia shone even brighter. Her care and love for her sister was obvious to anyone who observed them, highlighting their close bond. The next head of the family, as expected, was radically different from the rest. Her events and decisions always had their own unique flavor and style. Lydia looked at Erica with a blank gaze, as if trying to penetrate deeper into her sister's thoughts and understand what had previously remained hidden. Before, they had been too young to understand much, but now, looking at her sister, Lydia clearly saw everything that had previously escaped her attention. She understood that Erica's smile was always slightly false, hiding the real emotions that her sister knew how to carefully hide from strangers. After this, Lydia ordered all the servants to stop staring at Erica and get to work, reminding them that their attention should be focused on their duties. Moreover, these people saw Erica's face every day, so their gaze should not linger on her for too long, and they had to work productively. Lydia was sorry, but from now on, she was not going to allow her sister to take the leading role in family affairs and in the eyes of others. Last night, the butler told Lydia something important, information that made her wary and more attentive to her sister's condition. He admitted that he was unsure whether to tell the truth, but he assured her that Lady Erica was indeed perfectly healthy, and that was the key point for Lydia. Erica had been weak since childhood, so she could sometimes get sick, but now this did not pose a serious threat, and caring for her could be more relaxed. Lydia asked the butler if he could be held accountable for his words, and confirmed that the information was completely accurate and without error. She wanted to make sure that there was not the slightest mistake, and that her confidence in her sister's condition was complete and beyond doubt. The doctor replied that he did not want to brag, but he was one of the best doctors in the empire, and that was why Lydia invited him, trusting his professionalism. Lydia acknowledged that this was indeed the case, and was satisfied with the specialist's competence, seeing him as a reliable support for her sister. She asked the doctor not to tell anyone about Erica's condition, so that the information would remain strictly between them and would not become known to outsiders. Lydia clenched her hands, not understanding where the false information could have come from, and felt a strange mixture of anger and confusion. Even though the anger and anxiety were still there, my head remained cool. It was impossible to let my grandfather find out about this ahead of time. Lydia wondered why the doctors didn't tell her the truth, because the information could be critical for the family, and this made her anxious. She ordered the doctor to continue visiting Erica in the future and to regularly inform her about her sister's condition, to be sure of her loved one's health. The doctor had to pretend that he was the doctor Grandpa had sent today, Otherwise, Lydia might refuse further examinations and assistance. She called Erica to check how prepared her sister was and how far she could go in preparing for the upcoming event. Lydia asked the butler to bring the sketches she had ordered in advance to make sure everything was ready and matched her plan. He apologized, saying that he had meant to show them earlier but had forgotten, and this had caused some mild irritation, although there had been no serious consequences. After this, the butler presented the dresses, which he had worked on with all his heart, trying to take into account all of Lydia's wishes and prepare everything perfectly. The girl asked for a little time to think about her choice, feeling a slight excitement and curiosity at the same time. She turned to her sister to get her opinion and asked which outfit Erica liked the most. Erica, without thinking, pointed to one dress, expressing a clear preference for it, smiling slightly. It turned out that this dress was the same one the girl wore at the previous ceremony, evoking memories. Naturally, Lydia chose him, feeling a connection with the past and confident in the correctness of her choice. Despite the same cut and style, the dress looked dark and heavy, reflecting the atmosphere of that event. Lydia quietly asked her grandfather to let her use the outfit without revealing all the details. She noted that it would also suit Erica perfectly, but to sew it, she would need the finest silk fabric and precious stone embellishments. Lydia, watching her sister with curiosity, wanted to know what dress Erica would choose for her, anticipating that the answer would be unexpected and a little unusual. Erica was surprised by this question, not understanding why her sister needed to choose the same outfit, since usually each of them chose something individual and unique. Lydia explained that, being twins, they often emphasized their similarities to others, and this tradition almost always accompanied their joint outings. She added that there was no reason to worry. The relationship would be obvious to everyone, even if the outfits were different, so matching clothes were not necessary. Sometimes, when they do wear similar dresses, they have to choose different shades, and Lydia especially avoids dark colors, preferring light and shimmering tones. Lydia herself had already made her choice, a golden-hued dress, which was later to become the center of attention and attract the attention of all the guests present. That's why they invited Taylor Dale to help bring the unusual dress design to life, taking into account all the details and subtleties that are important to Lydia. Despite the unconventionality of the design, Lydia was determined that this would be her outfit, and no one could convince her otherwise, because the dress completely corresponded to her ideas of style. The tailor was amazed by such a decisive choice, and immediately recognized that the dress was truly extraordinarily beautiful, with refined lines and harmony that emphasized the girl's taste. He noted that Lydia has an amazing sense of style, which is evident even in such small details as the choice of color or shape of details that can change the overall look. The tailor also admitted that he had not expected to see in her such an ability to appreciate the artistic value of an outfit and understand how details influence the perception of the entire ensemble. In his opinion, Lydia's view of art and fashion was truly modern and ahead of its time. Her decisions were inspiring and demonstrated an extraordinary refinement of taste. After this, Lydia asked to see another catalog with samples, because she wanted to explore all the options, new ideas, and possible combinations in order to finally make her choice. The tailor promised that from the chosen material, he would create a true masterpiece that would meet her high standards and highlight the girl's style and individuality. Erica felt a slight irritation when Lydia turned away, thinking that her sister shouldn't be so easy to choose the best, as if she had an advantage that made her slightly angry. Erica herself had dreamed of trying on this dress before, because her ideas of beauty coincided with Lydia's choice, and the tailor assured her that the outfit would look perfect on her, causing hidden envy. After these thoughts, Lydia again turned her attention to her sister, carefully studying her face and trying to understand what was going on inside. What emotions were hidden behind her smile and gaze? She assessed how Erica reacted to the setting and the dress, trying to anticipate her opinion, and wondered if her sister thought the outfit would fit as perfectly as she imagined. Lydia waited for a confident answer that would confirm her plan and allow her to feel that her strategic choice was indeed correct, that she had not made a mistake in her calculations. Erica responded with a smile that expressed complete trust and confidence, as if confirming that the dress really did fit and would look perfect on her, emphasizing her dignity. This reaction was exactly what Lydia had hoped for, and she felt her sense of control over the situation increase, and her plan began to come together perfectly. Lydia realized that she would now be the one to take on the role that had previously belonged to Erica and would manage events, directing them in the right direction and maintaining her own advantage. She imagined how her sister would react when doubts about her own decisions began to make themselves felt, and this anticipation only strengthened Lydia's desire to control the process. Lydia decided to take complete control of the situation, adjusting every detail and directing the development of events so that everything happened strictly according to her plan and in her interests. She ordered the curtains to be raised as high as possible to create an impression of grandeur and solemnity, enhancing the spectacular effect and emphasizing the status of the event. The main task at this moment remained careful preparation for the ceremony so that not a single detail was missed and everything went smoothly, without surprises and with a perfect result. Before them was a joint coming-of-age ceremony, conceived as an important event that was supposed to emphasize their status and become the main moment in the lives of both sisters. The ceremony began calmly and without incident, and for Lydia, it felt more like a personal celebration, an opportunity to demonstrate control and organization than a mere formal event. The banquet hall was decorated impeccably. Every element was thoughtfully considered. The guests were selected with attention to detail, and everything was in keeping with the family's high status, creating an atmosphere of sophistication and order. Guests noted Lydia's family's impressive fortune, discussed her position and opportunities, and this gave the ceremony special weight, making the event even more significant and memorable. Although the invitation hinted at a modest celebration, the entire organization fell on Lydia's shoulders, and she enjoyed deciding the details herself, thinking through every moment and overseeing the process. As expected, her strategic mind was on full display. Every step, every detail was carefully planned, and the preparations went exactly according to her calculations, without a single mistake. Everything went exactly as Lydia had planned, and her planning was spot on. Every element of the event harmonized with the others, fully justifying the expectations and efforts put into the preparation. All that remained was to show up at the ceremony and complete all the preparations, feeling deep satisfaction that everything had gone perfectly and that her efforts had not been in vain. Suddenly, Lydia lost her balance and started to fall, and Grandfather Scary, full of concern, instantly jumped to her side to hold her and make sure that nothing happened to her. Several days spent preparing for the ceremony had deprived her of sleep and rest. Her strength was gradually leaving her body, and fatigue was reflected in every movement, making everything slower and more difficult. Grandfather didn't understand why Lydia was doing everything alone, since he had already offered to help, but she stubbornly hid her difficulties and tried to cope on her own. Lydia reassured him that she was perfectly fine and there was no need to worry. She felt completely in control of the situation and could handle everything herself. Despite her fatigue and stress, she wasn't about to let Erica get the upper hand. At the very moment of her concentration, a voice interrupted her thoughts and distracted her, causing her to tense up. The butler hurried to Lydia, his voice filled with alarm. It was immediately clear that something serious had happened, something that could disrupt the heroine's peace and plans. Lydia asked about what had happened, trying to remain calm, but her heart already sensed trouble approaching, sensing that this would be no ordinary event. The butler managed to utter only the word dress, and that was enough. Lydia immediately realized the situation was far more serious than expected, and the consequences would be significant. Without wasting a moment, Lydia rushed to the scene. Her heart was clenched with anxiety, and every second brought her closer to realizing the scale of what had happened. As she approached, she saw her dress in complete disarray. The fabric was torn, and preparations for the important ceremony were suddenly in jeopardy. Her anxiety instantly intensified. Turetsky, standing nearby, apologized, explaining that a thief had likely broken into the castle the previous night. His words only added to the tension, as the chaos left a noticeable mark after the nighttime invasion. He explained that this particular dress had been damaged. The thief had managed to escape, leaving the butler bewildered and eager to fix everything as quickly as possible to avoid ruining the ceremony. Lydia went through many possible situations and options, preparing for the unexpected, while Erica chose a simple and childish entertainment for herself. She simply wanted to laugh at her sister's behavior, seeing it as childish pranks, and this caused her slight annoyance and surprise. Lydia was upset that such a simple, childish prank had succeeded for Erica, leaving behind a feeling of irritation and discontent. She reminded the Turkish leader that she had already told him to keep an eye on what was happening and demanded that he take his responsibilities seriously and not allow such irresponsibility to continue. The butler promised to take her comments into account and act more carefully in the future, demonstrating respect and understanding of the seriousness of the situation. After this, Lydia sent him away, giving herself time to collect her thoughts and consider how to cope with the consequences of what had happened. The man did not fully understand why their meeting had to take place in the garden, but he respected her decisions and calmly followed her instructions. Erica realized that it was best to keep their meeting private and emphasized the need for caution and discretion to ensure that no one knew about their private meetings and conversations. She felt the long-awaited moment because they had not seen each other for a long time, and this gave the meeting a special warmth, making every moment more valuable and significant for both of them. Erica looked at Lydia with interest, trying to understand how her appearance and mood had changed after all the trials and events she had experienced, carefully studying every detail. The man remarked that Lydia looked amazing, emphasizing her beauty and grandeur, despite the difficulties and recent worries that did not seem to diminish her charm. The dress was ruined, as she had requested, but the knowledge that it would not lead to victory slightly overshadowed the joy of the moment, leaving Lydia with mixed feelings. Erica tried to ease the tension and add some lightness to the event, assuring them that there was no point in worrying about the dress and other small details, since the moment of the meeting itself was more important. She realized that her chances were almost non-existent, and accepted this fact with slight regret, understanding her capabilities and limitations in this situation, calmly accepting reality. Erica explained that everything is connected to her leading role in the century, with the special importance of the position and the responsibility that she feels, and this influences her every step and decision. He listened attentively and tried to understand why she thought this way, striving to understand his sister's logic and the reasons for her internal tension, evaluating her words with attention. Erica admitted that this is due to the fact that they are twins, which creates a special bond and at the same time places additional responsibilities and expectations on them. He didn't immediately understand how this connection between them affected what was happening, and he thought for a long time, trying to see the logic in his sister's words. He then said that he had already done everything she had asked, and now, as they had agreed, she would also have to help him to complete what he had started. Erica promised to try, and he noted that it was important to work with his sister correctly for everything to work out, and that she also needed to be received properly. She agreed, but noted that Lydia had changed recently, and perhaps knew more about them than they would like, which could affect their plans. He reassured her, noting that this could not be, because if Lydia knew the truth, she would definitely not remain inactive and would act differently. However, he added that his grandfather and sister were disgusting people who thought too much of themselves, and this also explained their strange behavior and mistakes. After that, he pulled Erica close to him, feeling that there was a real connection between them, and kissed her tenderly as a sign that everything was right and correct. He knew that the person who truly deserved everything was standing right in front of him, and this feeling was so strong that it was impossible to ignore. Suddenly, they heard strange sounds coming from the estate and decided to go check what was going on there to understand the source of the noise. What they saw horrified them, because the picture before them was not at all what they expected, and it caused a great shock. Lydia came out in a gold dress that looked perfect, although it should have been ruined earlier, and this caused them even more surprise. They were shocked because the dress turned out to be even more beautiful than the previous version, and amazed with its radiance and harmony of details, creating a feeling of magic. They couldn't understand how this happened, because he had prepared the dress himself and was sure that it could not have been made better. But the result exceeded all expectations. The dress combined a gold top and a bright blue bottom, creating a contrast and an unusual effect that attracted the eye and emphasized the grandeur of Lydia's image. She walked slowly down the stairs, displaying a proud and confident face, each of her steps filled with dignity and inner strength, noticeable to those around her. In the past, her life was a series of failures and defeats, and she often felt powerless in the face of circumstances, which left a deep mark on her soul. Now her steps were completely different. Confident, calm, and with every movement, she showed that she had changed and become stronger than ever before. Rebirth gave her the opportunity to decisively change her life and no longer allow past mistakes and disappointments to control her destiny. Erica looked at the guy with horror and asked if he was sure that the dress was torn, because the reality turned out to be completely different and did not match their expectations. She was informed that the dress was indeed torn, which immediately attracted the attention of the guests and caused quiet whispers around the room, although she tried to maintain a calm appearance and not show emotion. Meanwhile, Lydia expressed her sincere gratitude to everyone present, joyfully noting that they took the time to come to her coming-of-age ceremony, supporting her in this important moment in her life. She proudly emphasized that today was entirely dedicated to her entry into adulthood, and this event was extremely significant for her, like the completion of a long stage of preparation. Lydia then apologized to the guests for the sudden change of location, reminding them that everything was originally planned in the central hall, and she was grateful for their understanding and patience. Everyone listened to her with attention, and there was a sense of confidence in Lydia's voice. as if she had known how to hold the attention of a crowd since childhood and knew how to attract the attention of everyone present to her speech. Once upon a time, everything was different. Before, she would get lost and avoid such moments, embarrassed by the glances of the nobility. But now, this shyness was a thing of the past, giving way to conscious confidence and dignity. To one day take her grandfather's place, Lydia trained daily to lead meetings and speak in front of noble people, overcoming her fear and gradually transforming herself into a person worthy of attention and respect. As one could easily notice, the celebration took place in the Count's luxurious banquet hall, and there was a good reason for this. The location emphasized the status of the event and corresponded to the significance of the ceremony for all the guests. Her pronunciations sounded clear and distinct. Each intonation seemed to defend the honor of not only her family, but also everyone present, demonstrating good manners and the ability to control herself in any situation. There was a deep subtext to her words. Among the guests were influential people of the empire, and Lydia understood that inviting them to an ordinary estate would be inappropriate and not in keeping with the importance of the event. She emphasized that she was sincerely grateful to the Count and Countess for kindly providing their magnificent banquet hall, allowing the ceremony to be held at a dignified level and impress all the guests. Lydia also expressed special gratitude to her grandfather for the trust he placed in her in organizing such an important ceremony, showing respect for his experience and influence in the family's life. In fact, Lydia never liked to speak in front of people, preferring to remain in the shadows, where she felt calmer. But the need to fit in with the situation forced her to overcome her usual shyness. Erica watched her sister with slight amazement, not understanding when Lydia had managed to practice so much and gain confidence in her speech, which now sounded natural and calm, as if she had always been like that. In conclusion, Lydia announced the small gifts she had prepared for the guests, symbolizing her gratitude and respect, carefully emphasizing her attention to each person present without unnecessary ceremony. She asked guests to pick up their gifts after the party ended so that no one would linger and create a fuss, allowing everyone to finish the evening calmly without unnecessary rush and hassle. After this, Lydia decided not to occupy the guests' attention any longer, giving them the opportunity to enjoy the atmosphere of the evening, the flickering candles and the light music that filled the spacious hall. Meanwhile, Erica, seizing the opportune moment, quietly called one young man to follow her, and, almost unnoticed by everyone, led him to the exit, as if confidently hiding her intention from prying eyes. She took his hand firmly, and together they left the room, trying not to attract unnecessary attention, gliding past the guests with ease, as if dissolving in the soft glow of the evening light. Their departure went unnoticed by most, except Lydia, whose gaze accidentally caught movement at the door, and for a moment she froze, realizing that her sister was up to something unusual. Seeing Erica, Lydia thought for a moment, because she knew her sister too well not to understand that there was some kind of plan hidden behind this, cunningly thought out and almost obvious to an attentive observer. Lydia had prepared everything necessary in advance. 2 outfits. She left one dress in the mansion, and the other, more suitable for the planned event, she placed where no one expected to see it, thinking through the details in advance. The unfinished outfit remained at home, and the finished dress waited for Erica outside the estate, like a quiet hint to her plan, demonstrating the thoughtfulness of every step and the foresight of her older sister. Looking at her sister, Lydia suddenly felt a slight wave of respect, realizing that Erica, despite her quirks, was capable of skillful and thoughtful actions, which made her more admirable than she had previously seemed. Still, it seemed to her that sometimes Erica was too harsh in her judgments and actions, especially when it came to family, and this straightforwardness sometimes put Lydia in a difficult position, causing internal tension. In the end, Lydia did exactly as she had planned in advance, acting in accordance with her expectations, although deep down, she hoped that events would turn out differently and bring an unexpected turn. She was angered by her own sister, because Lydia sincerely believed that Erica would not behave this way and everything would turn out differently. But reality showed the opposite, causing her to feel slight irritation and annoyance. Now Lydia was finally convinced that her sister was too predictable, and all her actions were easy to read, like an open book, where every page was known in advance and left no room for surprises. After these thoughts, Lydia noticed that Grandfather Skari Freylik approached her, and his appearance surprised her a little because she did not expect to see the old man at that moment, and his calm smile added a slight feeling of peace. The old man praised his granddaughter, noting the magnificence of her speech and her ability to hold herself in front of guests, but lamented that Erica was not there, emphasizing the importance of her sister's presence and slightly regretting her absence. Lydia replied that Erica was tired, and that was why she decided not to take her with her to the ceremony, not wanting to disturb her sister, allowing her to rest and recuperate, showing care and understanding for her condition. Although Lydia wanted to take advantage of her grandfather's absence, he assured her that her actions were worthy and correct, not wrong in any way, supporting his granddaughter and respecting her decision. He was even slightly surprised at how quickly her oratorical skills had developed, since before she had been much more modest, barely daring to express her thoughts in front of others. Lydia admitted that she had been practicing diligently all this time while her grandfather was away, perfecting every word, carefully choosing her intonation, and striving to sound confident and convincing. After a short exchange of words, the girls suddenly invited her grandfather to dance, hoping to lift their spirits and add some lightness to their casual conversation. The old man was slightly puzzled by this initiative and reminded Lydia that she should have chosen her own partner for the dance, but there was a slight hint of insolence in her gaze. In fact, she didn't have a partner. Lydia sent an invitation to Duke Ivan, but he never responded, leaving her a little confused before the celebration. Moreover, she sent the invitation late, and according to tradition, it is customary to appear at the coming-of-age ceremony with a chosen companion, which made her loneliness even more noticeable. Due to the intrigues of her sister Erica, Lydia was completely absorbed in her own affairs and tried not to remember the past when she announced her engagement to Marquis Yuri, trying to focus on the present. The grandfather was genuinely surprised that his granddaughter did not have a dance partner, as this seemed unusual for such an important evening, making him slightly doubt the family traditions. Lydia, with a slight smile and a joking tone, said that she already had a partner, her grandfather himself, but the old man suggested finding someone among the guests, hinting at the need to observe etiquette. At that moment, they both turned around and noticed Erica gracefully dancing with Yuri, which caused genuine surprise among those present and livened up the atmosphere in the hall. The guests were amazed, and the grandfather could not understand why they dared to appear together so openly, demonstrating their unity in front of all the nobility, as if ignoring past disagreements. Lydia froze in shock, not believing her eyes that her sister had dared to go out onto the dance floor with Yuri, without hiding or trying to remain modest, showing confidence and audacity. Their appearance seemed provocative, as if Erica and Yuri had deliberately decided to demonstrate their unity and attract the attention of everyone present, heightening the intrigue of the evening. And even after the recent scandal between them, Erica seemed to feel completely confident, not embarrassed for a moment, and confidently holding the attention of everyone around her. Soon, Lydia heard those around her admiring her beauty, noting that she attracted glances, creating a feeling of grace and a unique aura that made her stand out among the guests. At that moment, Erica looked straight at Lydia and smiled faintly, as if enjoying what was happening, confirming her confidence and inner satisfaction with the moment. She carried herself as if she were the true heroine of the occasion, confident in her flawless role. Lydia felt anger boiling up inside her. She still lacked recognition despite all her efforts. She began to realize that she might never be able to compare to Erica, who had a dazzling appearance. Lydia suddenly caught movement in the hall, as if something important had caught her attention. Her heart sank as she realized who had appeared at the entrance. Duke Ivan calmly walked past Erica and Yuri, causing both to freeze in place. Their surprise was so intense that the conversation around them died down. All eyes turned to him, and silence seemed to envelop the hall. People couldn't hide their surprise, as no one expected to see the Grand Duke here. Those present were confused about his appearance. Why had he come to the ball if he always avoided such gatherings and social events? After all, Ivan was known for keeping aloof from such events, preferring solitude and restraint to courtly conversations. And yet, he approached Lydia and, maintaining his dignity, calmly apologized to her for being late, as if he had arrived according to a prearranged plan. Lydia froze, unable to understand why he was there, but he noticed her confusion and, with a slight smile, reminded her that she hadn't yet chosen a partner. He winked slyly as he said this, and Lydia felt a blush creep across her cheeks. His gaze was too direct for her to remain indifferent. The Duke extended his hand to her, a gesture both inviting and confident. Lydia realized she had no choice and allowed him to take her arm. He said quietly that he'd like to ask her to dance. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of mockery and hidden warmth in it. Just a few days ago, Ivan couldn't believe that he would receive an invitation from Lydia, and so late, too, as if she had doubted it until the very end. He found it impossible to simply ignore it. He felt obligated to respond, but he wanted to do it in his own, unexpected way. The Duke decided to play a little joke by appearing unannounced to see Lydia's sincere reaction and the slight confusion that was reflected in her eyes. When he entered, the party was already in full swing. The music was loud, couples were swirling around the hall, and the lights were softly reflected in the mirrors, creating an atmosphere of magic. Suddenly, his gaze fell on one of the couples in the center. Something in their movement caught his attention, causing him to forget everything else around him for a moment. He saw Erica dancing with Yuri, and this sight caused him a strange irritation, which he himself could not explain. As if the internal order had been disturbed, the thought of Marquis Yuri being here seemed alien to him. He couldn't understand why he had come or what he intended to do at this ball. The irritation grew, and the Duke began to look around for Lydia, hoping to make sure that she was not near Yuri and was not involved in this scene. A moment later, he saw her standing to the side, as if lost among the multitude of guests, with slight tension and uncertainty in her movements. Lydia looked lost, like a little kitten left without support. Her gaze was filled with sadness and loneliness, as if she were searching for support. She gathered her will into a fist and decided to take control of the situation, not allowing confusion to take hold of her, and deliberately stepped towards what was happening. Ivan, feeling an inner challenge, also didn't remain in the shadows. His presence became noticeable, as if he were deliberately trying to draw everyone's attention to himself. Lydia decided to approach him, overcoming the wave of feelings and embarrassment that his very presence caused, and her steps became confident, despite her inner turmoil. The Duke calmly showed that he had no need for formalities by offering to call him by his first name, as if the usual barriers and conventions no longer existed between them. At that moment, he noticed how Lydia's expression changed. Confusion gradually gave way to softness, almost trust, as if she were opening her thoughts to him. She looked down and closed her eyes for a brief moment, as if trying to think about what she should say to him in response. Lydia, having collected her thoughts, quietly said that she had been waiting for his appearance, and there was genuine relief in her voice. She hid her emotions behind a mask of indifference, pretending everything was going as usual. Ivan calmly said he'd borrow Lydia from her grandfather for a while. Grandfather Scarius was shocked to see the Duke act with such determination, confidence, and unhesitatingly. Ivan watched Lydia closely, noticing how she sheepishly averted her gaze, as if trying to hide her feelings. Lydia quietly admitted that she thought he wouldn't come. The Duke hadn't previously shown any interest in such meetings, and she hadn't expected his presence. Ivan, with a barely perceptible smile, made it clear he couldn't have done otherwise. He knew how important this anticipation was to her, and his personal appearance mattered. Ivan's insides were seething with emotion. Feeling a little guilty for coming so late, he apologized, trying to speak with respect and gentleness so as not to offend Lydia. Lydia appreciated his politeness and quietly suggested he address her simply by her first name. She wanted to remove any unnecessary formality and tension between them. The Duke smiled slightly, noticing that she hadn't changed at all. He seemed to hope that her thoughts about him remained the same. Then Ivan took a step closer, as if trying to read her gaze. Lydia felt her cheeks instantly flush and her heart sank. He sensed her embarrassment, but Lydia quickly turned away, trying to hide her nervousness. She said it had nothing to do with him, trying to remain calm. Ivan calmly replied that he was not trying to embarrass her, since he was not at all trying to seduce or embarrass her. She noticed that he behaved too freely among the guests, as if he was deliberately showing that he was allowed to do anything. At this, Ivan chuckled, and said that in such a society, it was important to be able to maintain confidence, otherwise you would lose respect. He gently reminded her that last time, Lydia had never explained what she had meant in that conversation, leaving her words incomplete and fraught with uncertainty, as if something important had eluded her understanding. Lydia looked at him with slight surprise, not immediately realizing what exactly he was talking about, and Ivan quietly added that he was interested in who the Azitan family's real enemy was. At that moment, their gazes involuntarily met and slid towards Erica and Yuri, as if trying to read a hidden answer between them that could reveal the secret of what was happening. Lydia felt that one of them was truly capable of undermining the family's trust, and the realization of this made her heart stop for a moment, sensing an impending threat. And the other is just a cunning marquis with whom Lydia was forced to dance, hiding her irritation and inner discontent, carefully disguising her emotions under a polite smile. Then Lydia realized that Ivan was not just attentive, but truly insightful, capable of reading emotions and intentions without words, guessing hidden thoughts with precision. He immediately understood that she wanted to be the center of attention at this reception, and did not condemn her desire, allowing Lydia to express herself the way she needed to for her purposes. Ivan began to lead her in the dance, creating the impression of an ideal couple. Their movements were harmonious, and the guests' gazes involuntarily stopped on them, enchanted by the harmony and grace. He made it clear to her that if she wished to shine, she could use him as a tool to achieve her goal, supporting her ambitions while maintaining her nobility. However, Lydia could not understand why Ivan looked as if he was holding back irritation or jealousy. His face remained calm, but his eyes betrayed a hidden emotion. She thought with irony about how to use him for her plans, if he did not even respond to her previous invitation, leaving her in a state of slight bewilderment and confusion. To this, Ivan responded calmly, explaining that he had not at all refused to attend the ball, but that circumstances had simply prevented him from giving an answer in time, and that this was not at all a sign of disdain. He added that if she did not receive an immediate response, she could write again, showing persistence and interest, which was part of a subtle game of attentiveness and a demonstration of personal initiative. Lydia thought he was offended, but Ivan suddenly asked sharply how much time she usually spent in the bathroom, and this strange question made her think about his attention and care. Although he appeared irritated on the outside, Lydia knew that beneath that apparent sternness lay a care and concern that made his behavior both mysterious and reassuring. He really was someone who could be useful and needed by her, more than Lydia was willing to admit, and his presence was becoming unexpectedly important to her goals and plans. When she asked him again what he meant, Ivan explained that it all had to do with her failed contract, and his words sounded like a gentle but confident reproach, forcing her to rethink the situation. Lydia was embarrassed and looked away, not knowing how to react to his confident statements, which were simultaneously a remark and hidden support, creating mixed emotions in her. He continued that no one in their right mind enters into a deal unless they are confident in their own benefit and position, emphasizing the importance of caution and strategic thinking, which made Lydia think deeper. And then Lydia again saw that look that she remembered from before, attentive, warm, and persistent at the same time. His eyes reflected genuine trust in her, as if he believed that she would not betray or deceive his expectations. That's why she didn't dare write to him earlier, only asking him to check whether all the correspondence had arrived correctly. And when Ivan finally responded to her invitation, Lydia felt an unexpected relief and excitement. She made sure that every detail was prepared perfectly, and mentally thanked the butler for his attention and diligence. Noticing how everything was falling into place perfectly for the upcoming event, Lydia realized that she would have to go through the upcoming test on her own, without anyone's help, and this thought gave her a slight feeling of excitement and even a little joy. Having decided to be frank, Lydia admitted to Duke Ivan that she had placed her bet on the well-being of her family and was ready to take risks to ensure their future. The Duke merely chuckled, noting that such recognition spoke of her as an unusual, courageous, and strong woman, capable of making her own decisions without fear. Lydia thanked him and, slightly embarrassed, added that she also found him to be a mysterious and incredibly interesting person, attractive and commanding respect. Ivan calmly asked her to give a direct and honest answer, so as not to avoid making a choice and to show determination, which, in his opinion, she had enough of. Lydia firmly stated that her goal was to be noticeable and outshine everyone around her, so that they would whisper about her at this reception and she would become the center of events. She added that he understood her intentions correctly. She wanted to be the center of attention, the main figure of the evening, the one everyone would talk about. With a slight grin, Ivan said that it wouldn't be difficult for her, and Lydia, hearing this, involuntarily felt a surge of embarrassment and barely noticeable excitement. She asked anxiously what he meant, but Ivan only approached her, looking straight into her eyes, and in that look, one could read confidence and gentle determination. It all happened very quickly. He only had time to apologize for the suddenness before he passionately kissed her, leaving Lydia in slight confusion and surprise. Lydia could not understand why he chose this particular moment, in the middle of the ball, in front of everyone present, when every movement was visible to the guests. Everyone around them seemed to freeze, watching them, as if a scene were unfolding on a theatrical stage where every gesture was important and attracted attention. Quietly reminding him that he had already spoken about his usefulness, Ivan this time proved it with his actions, showing that his words and actions always go hand in hand. He stole her first kiss without hesitation, as if declaring his right before everyone. Lydia was shocked. She didn't understand why he decided to do this without asking her consent. And yet, despite her slight embarrassment, Lydia felt that the entire room was watching her closely, as if every movement and glance was directed exclusively at her. She was no longer going to retreat and disappear back into the shadows where she had once voluntarily hidden, and was now ready to take her place in the spotlight without hesitation. However, Lydia did not expect at all that her emergence from the shadows would happen so suddenly and unpredictably, leaving her the most surprised by what was happening around her. Ivan's actions were both bold and cunning, and Lydia could not help but acknowledge his skill in organizing everything that was happening, marveling at his insight. She noticed her sister's angry look and the barely concealed displeasure of the Marquis, who was standing nearby, and this made her think about how to proceed further. But Lydia decided not to create a scandal and mentally promised herself that this time she would forgive the Duke, despite all his daring tricks and unexpected actions. She understood that someone had already created problems, and now it was she who would have to deal with the consequences, thinking through every step and the possibility of avoiding mistakes. After this, Ivan gallantly took her arm, demonstrating confidence and superiority, and Lydia felt his strong influence on what was happening around them. The crowd gasped in admiration, and Lydia realized that before her stood a true cunning man and strategist, capable of controlling people's attention and reactions so easily and naturally. She raised her hand to get the attention of the audience and stated her intention to make an important announcement, focusing entirely on her words and the audience's reactions. Lydia announced with a slight smile that she and Duke Ivan were soon going to get married, as if it were an event everyone had been waiting for. She decided to use this moment to strengthen her position in society and show that she was able to manage the situation with dignity. Lydia gently reminded him that she knew about the rumors surrounding the Duke and did not intend to hide them, demonstrating openness and confidence. According to her, the Duke did not comment on these rumors, preferring to keep their relationship a secret until she came of age. Lydia couldn't know how true the rumors were, but she knew that any denial would only make them look like fools in the eyes of society. She noted that with each new tale, their feelings only grew stronger, and thanked everyone present for supporting them even through rumors. Grandfather and the guests were amazed by her determination and courage because no one expected that Lydia would declare her intentions so openly. Some looked at each other, discussing what had happened, as if they expected there would be a continuation. At that moment, butlers and servants entered the hall, carrying decorated boxes with gifts. They gave gifts to those who, without realizing it, helped Lydia and Ivan get closer. Everyone was amazed to see the exquisite items and realized that their value could not be measured. Today's coming-of-age celebration turned out to be especially bright and luxurious, and even the most arrogant nobles could not hide their admiration for the evening's events. Every gift she prepared brought smiles and surprise, because Lydia had finally done what she had long wanted, and it was felt in every look. She realized that human relationships are actually simpler than she imagined if you approach them with patience and attention to detail rather than cold logic. The Count and Countess generously made their ballroom available for the celebration, although they had never previously allowed outside guests to use this magnificent space. In fact, the permit was not obtained just like that, but thanks to a carefully thought-out deal that took into account the interests of both parties and their ambitions. Money and contracts, as always, proved to be the most reliable way to achieve one's goals, because in the world of noble games, only material and legal arguments were indisputable. In this way, Lydia could prove her importance, show that she could not only be attractive, but also influential, manage events, and attract the attention of the right people. She realized that her efforts were not in vain, because her ability to act at the right moment made her truly useful, and those around her were already beginning to notice and appreciate it. And when Ivan looked at her, Lydia smiled at him, as if letting him know that he should enjoy the evening and that nothing would distract him from the celebration. He, however, did not quite understand the reason for this smile, but he felt in it a lightness and warmth that he rarely experienced in such official situations. After this, Lydia went outside to rest a little and be alone, thinking about everything that had happened during the evening and enjoying the warm air and silence. One big task had already been completed, and now all that remained was to catch her breath and evaluate her successes, without the unnecessary stress that had accompanied her all this time. Grandfather was able to calm down all those who were too eager to get to know Lydia by setting boundaries and reminding them that respect and caution are more important than curiosity. Lydia also didn't know where Yuri and Erica had gone. Their absence left a strange feeling of emptiness and, at the same time, relief, since events could have developed differently. She was left with mixed feelings, doubts, anxiety, and slight dissatisfaction, but also confidence that she had accomplished some of the tasks she had set for herself. Perhaps Erica could still improve, or perhaps Yuri was still influencing her, and Lydia understood that controlling the situation required caution and patience. If they can be kept apart, there's a chance that Erica will get back on track, and Lydia will be able to keep the peace between them without completely ruining their relationship. But when Lydia saw that very look after their dance, she felt a strong pang inside. That look spoke volumes, and she realized that events were getting out of control. She realized that her sister might have hated her all this time, and despite her efforts to push such thoughts away, Lydia's heart sank with pain and disappointment. But when she saw them together with this man, Lydia could no longer keep everything to herself. Emotions overwhelmed her, and she realized that the time had come to act and not remain silent. Perhaps Lydia was mistaken in thinking that there was kindness in her, but looking at what was happening, she realized that her actions sometimes hid cruelty and cold calculation. And also, calculation, which is why she was abandoned too early, left facing betrayal, which she was able to forget for a short time, immersing herself in work and affairs. Abandoned early, Lydia felt the pain and bitterness of betrayal. But her thoughts were occupied with events that allowed her to temporarily distract herself from this wound and focus on the future. Suddenly, Yuri approached her without disturbing her space and threw a cloak over her, showing concern that mixed past grievances with unexpected softness and attention. He warned that if Lydia sat there for a long time without moving, it could have a bad effect on her health and she might even get sick, although she herself did not expect such words. She was surprised by his appearance, not understanding where he had come from. He simply stood before her, smiling calmly, as if he knew more about her thoughts than she did. Lydia asked why he was there, assuming he was perhaps just smoking. Her surprise grew with each passing second of his serene gaze. But instead of a cigarette, he took out a small lollipop and said that he had prepared it for her as a small gesture of attention that she did not expect to see. She asked in surprise what kind of sweet it was, not understanding how an ordinary candy could be connected with his visit and his unusual behavior. Lydia laughed, and he noticed that it pleased him to see her smile, as if this simple moment of joy meant more to him than she could ever imagine. Then Lydia just looked at him in surprise, not knowing what to expect next. Her emotions were filled with a mixture of curiosity and slight confusion. He asked if she had seen the expressions on her sisters' and the Marquis's faces before they disappeared, hinting at something that had escaped her attention. But Lydia replied that no, she had not watched them because her thoughts were occupied with other events, and she had no time for other people's emotions at that moment. He noted that they looked like children whose favorite toys had been taken away, and Lydia felt a slight desire to see it with her own eyes, even though she couldn't. But Ivan assured her that she would still have a chance, and this promise sounded unexpected to her, giving her confidence and a slight anticipation of the future. He showed concern for her so obviously that Lydia was amazed. She did not expect such an attitude at all, and barely had time to comprehend his attention. Yes, there were contracts between them that were supposed to satisfy their mutual needs, and this added a formal aspect to the relationship that was difficult to ignore. Lydia no longer expected anything from him after that kiss, and this feeling eased her internal tension, although it remained light and unusual. She asked him if he had caught his eye at the ball, not wanting to trade him for someone else, and these thoughts showed her concern for what was important to him. He asked again what she was talking about, and said that if that was the case, they could wait a little with the wedding. But that was not the end of their conversation. Ivan was surprised by her words and admitted that he did not understand why she was upset when everything was going so smoothly, and this caused Lydia a slight confusion. He told her that she should be happy because victory was already on her side, and Lydia felt the warmth of his confidence, which slightly dispelled her worries. He also added that he asked her not to make such a face, as if hinting at her expression, which he considered unnecessary, and this caused a slight chuckle from Lydia. Lydia looked a little nervous, trying to understand what exactly he meant, and her inner tension was gradually replaced by curiosity. She assumed he was angry about something, but Ivan quickly apologized, softening the atmosphere and showing that his intentions were good-natured. Lydia thanked him for his help and said that he could hold off on fulfilling his part of the contract for now, as if giving himself time to think and assess the situation. But he noted that she seemed to have misunderstood something, and this added a slight note of misunderstanding that they both had to clear up. He wasn't going to leave her alone without knowing her story, and that sense of responsibility gave Lydia a new sense of support she wasn't prepared for. When Ivan looked at her, something inside him told him that there was a special connection between them, and Lydia felt that this feeling was difficult to describe in words. It seemed to him that they were somehow similar, and this inner feeling brought them together, creating a special understanding that did not require explanations or proof. She asked what exactly Ivan meant, trying to decipher the meaning of his words and understand where he was leading their conversation and these hints. Lydia had no idea where he was going with this, her thoughts darting between doubt and a slight anticipation of what might follow next. Ivan said he thought they could be good partners, and the statement sounded like a quiet promise that left a slight feeling of hope in Lydia's heart. Maybe they would just remain friends, and nothing more would happen between them, although doubts and hope flickered in Lydia's heart at the same time. He felt a closeness between them and secretly decided to keep his word, ready to help Lydia in a difficult situation, but only within the limits of what was permitted. He did not like to see sadness on people's faces, especially those who were dear to him, and he tried to do everything possible to ease their state of mind. Deep down, he hoped he would never hear such regret or pain in her voice again, and that gave him a slight feeling of reassurance. The idea, which had seemed simple before, was now deep in his mind, and he was trying to find a way to implement it without making unnecessary mistakes. The next day, the spacious Aziton family mansion was bustling with the morning bustle, filled with soft light and quiet sounds that created a sense of calm. The butler came to Lydia, remembering that the previous evening she had been unusually beautiful and graceful, as if the whole atmosphere around her had become warmer. He was looking forward to the moment when he could see her happy face, because everything was now going according to a carefully thought-out plan that did not tolerate delay. Perhaps today Lydia would even finish work earlier than usual, which would allow her to enjoy a long-awaited break and take care of personal matters. He walked up to her with a slight smile, filled with joy, but was immediately surprised to notice her unusually serious and focused expression. Lydia stood before him with a stern and even angry expression, working on documents or letters, as if the whole world had ceased to exist around her. He tried to make sure everything was okay, addressing her with his usual care and respect, hoping to see a smile and lightness in her gaze. But Lydia didn't react to his words at first, immersed in her thoughts, as if completely disconnected from the surrounding reality. He guessed that something might be bothering her, and his heart sank with worry, because he wanted to support her, even if she didn't show it. However, Lydia confidently stated that this was not the case, reminding him of the events of the previous day, which left a strange feeling of fatigue and tension in her soul. It was difficult for her to utter a word. Her breathing was interrupted, and she could not express a single thought out loud, as if the past was squeezing her throat with invisible bonds. When he left the room, she simply remained silent, left alone with herself, and this silence weighed on her more than any words or explanations. Lydia felt guilty and irritated with herself, as if every gesture and look she made wasn't expressive enough, and she was trying to deal with it alone. She felt awkward and stupid, and the silence seemed painful to her, as if she had lost control of her own emotions and behavior. Meanwhile, the butler wanted to discuss important documents, collect signatures, and clarify details that required his attention and Lydia's participation. But instead of a business-like conversation, she suddenly raised her voice, breaking out of her usual calm rhythm. And this surprised even him, who was accustomed to her reasonableness. She said that regarding her facial expression, everything was not as bad as it might seem, trying to explain that external severity did not reflect the internal state. The butler froze in place, deep in thought, then slowly turned away, as if considering whether to intervene in what was happening or leave everything as it was. He noted that such things sometimes seem a little scary, especially when you look from the outside, not understanding all the nuances and not realizing the depth of what is happening around you. After a short pause, he became thoughtful with obvious interest and decided to find out why exactly she decided to ask such a question. What specifically prompted her to start this conversation? She explained that it was because of the beauty of the moment, and then added that she was going to step away for a while, take a short break, and come back later to calmly think about everything. Therefore, the butler could calmly leave the documents on the table without touching them and continue to perform his normal duties while Lydia was absent from the room without worrying about anything. After these words, she quietly left the room, her steps light, confident, and almost silent as she walked down the long corridor, leaving behind a feeling of calm. Her thoughts again turned to Ivan, to how much he had taken over her entire inner world, filling her mind and heart to the brim, leaving no room for emptiness. He seemed to envelop her completely, and Lydia could not stop thinking about him, imagining him in the most unexpected and varied situations that arose in her imagination. According to rumors, Ivan was a man of high status, and Lydia was surprised how such an important and influential person could show interest in her, making her heart beat faster. He seemed like the perfect candidate for her carefully crafted plan, the one who could play a key role in her future. Lydia stopped in front of the door and paused, as if collecting her thoughts before taking the next step. The thought of her sister, whom she had locked in the room since yesterday, came into her head, and Lydia assessed the situation, trying to figure out how to proceed. She decided not to visit her sister for now, and not to react to what was happening in any way, in order to give herself time to think and prepare for further action. All this was necessary to collect one's thoughts and assess the situation before making any decisions that could change the course of events. But then Lydia knocked on the door and quietly asked if Erica was inside, checking if she was ready to talk. Erica replied that she was in the room, and her voice was calm, although it concealed a slight surprise at the sudden visit. Lydia asked if she could come in, demonstrating respect for her sister's privacy and caution in her actions. She asked how Erica was feeling, noting that she had been surprised when she had suddenly disappeared yesterday, which left Lydia with a lot of questions. Lydia believed that her sister might have fallen ill, but given that everyone had been searched and checked, she began to doubt the true reasons for Erica's disappearance. Erica responded by expressing curiosity about how Lydia met the Grand Duke, and expressed interest in events that could influence their future. Lydia said that everything happened by chance, that the meeting with the Duke was unexpected and not planned, as it might have seemed from the outside. Erica asked, "What about the Marquis?" To which Lydia replied that there was nothing between them, and they had never been connected by anything more than friendship. Moreover, he was Erica's dance partner, which made their communication visible and close to others, although this did not affect Lydia's real feelings. From the outside, it seemed like they were quite close, and Lydia understood that many people trusted these impressions, considering their friendship something special. Lydia hadn't expected Erica to ask such a question, and was therefore slightly taken aback by her curiosity and directness. Erica recalled that they first met when the Marquis was invited to the mansion, and this event became an important moment in their past. On the day the Marquis arrived to propose to Lydia, Erica saw the whole scene for the first time and began to form her own impressions of what was happening. Erica noted that this was new and unexpected for her, since she had not previously known all the details of what was happening and was observing the events from the outside. Lydia understood that Erica was weak and had difficulty leaving the room, so she expected that her sister would not reveal the whole truth and would be careful. Erica seemed reluctant to tell the whole story, and Lydia remarked that they looked good together. Now Lydia was leaving, and Erica could get some rest. Erica asked Lydia to stop and pay attention to the request so that she could meet the Duke, Lydia's future husband, and get to know him better. She really wanted to meet the man who would become her husband, and this moment was important for building trust and understanding of the future relationship. Lydia was shocked and asked herself what she had just heard, surprised by her sister's determination and her intention to make contact with an important person. Erica explained that as the younger sister, she had a duty to meet the Duke, who was of great importance to Lydia, and it was part of their family duty. Moreover, being twins, they were expected to be closely bonded, and so Erica insisted on meeting each other to strengthen their family relationship and future plans. This caused a storm of irritation in Lydia. She was overcome with furious discontent when Ivan suddenly entered the room. His appearance was unexpected and almost sudden. Lydia never expected him to appear here so quickly. This feeling of surprise and slight shock completely overwhelmed her, causing her to freeze in place. Ivan explained that he had heard of her presence here and had come trying to understand the situation. His attention completely focused on Lydia. Lydia was completely at a loss, not understanding how to react or what actions to take. Every thought seemed vague and confused. She could not understand why she was here, and why her presence could interfere with her acquaintance with the Duke. The situation was extremely tense. Her gaze fell on her sister, who stood next to her with determination in her eyes. She seemed collected and ready to act without hesitation, which worried Lydia even more. Gathering her courage, the sister approached the Duke, greeting him gracefully and reservedly, her manners polite yet confident. Lydia watched this with horror. Her heart sank as she saw the events unfolding right before her eyes, and the feeling of helplessness increased the tension. Meanwhile, Erica smiled at the Duke with charming softness. Her smile was welcoming and warm, as if inviting him to friendly communication. She gave her name, Erica, with natural friendliness, expressing a desire to get acquainted, her voice sounding welcoming and easy, without hidden intentions. Lydia tried to think of a way to stop this meeting, her mind full of strategies, but none of them seemed fast or effective enough. She watched her sister, who was already trying to establish friendly contact with the Duke, and clearly saw that Erica was doing this completely without regard for Lydia, completely immersing herself in her actions. The Duke seemed to grasp the essence of what was happening instantly. His attention became precise and selective. He discerned the intentions and true feelings of both sisters, emphasizing Lydia's honesty. He made it clear that he had come specifically to meet Lydia. His movements and confident gestures showed that all his attention was focused on her, and in this was his clear determination. After this, the Duke turned his back on Erica, as if emphasizing with his behavior that Lydia was now the center of his interest, and casual acquaintances and fleeting meetings were not important to him. There was a butler nearby who apparently informed the Duke of Lydia's presence here. His timely information played a key role. This very moment had been chosen for their appearance, and the coincidence seemed deliberate, as if events had come together at precisely the right moment for everyone involved. Ivan noted that this was probably the twin sister he saw yesterday, his attention caught by the similarity and connection between them, which added intrigue to the meeting. Erica admitted that yesterday she was a little surprised and was unable to greet him properly, but now she was genuinely happy to meet him, feeling at ease in communication. She remarked that she had heard how dear he was to Lydia, and this surprised Ivan, since his importance to the other only now seemed obvious. It was becoming clear that Erica didn't need Yuri's attention. Her desires included Ivan as well, as if she was trying to expand her influence on the relationships surrounding her sister. Erica was openly irritated by Lydia. Her actions and looks clearly showed hidden hostility and a desire to draw attention to herself. She was determined to make everything that belonged to Lydia her own in some way, and her motives were selfish and ambitious, which made the situation even more tense. Erica ardently desired to possess everything Lydia held dear. Her eyes burned like the flames of ambition, and she could not hide her thirst for control over someone else's property. Ivan noticed that Lydia was lost in her thoughts. Her gaze was heavy and tired, as if there was an invisible burden on her shoulders, pressing down harder and harder with each passing moment. He watched her every movement, listening to the silence and sighs, and realized that Lydia's anxiety was deep and genuine. Her heart did not find peace for a minute. Realizing her condition, Ivan told Erica that Lydia occupied a special place in his life, that caring for her and her well-being was the most important thing to him, without compromise. In this life, Lydia was determined, never allowing others to take away what was valuable, whether it was material things or feelings, which she guarded with the utmost care. He made her understand how much he cared for her, while leaving room for respect and caution, not wanting excessive affection to interfere with rational action. Erica, curious, couldn't resist asking about how exactly their first meeting had happened, hoping to spot a weakness or find a clue in the history of their relationship. She noted that Lydia herself called it a coincidence, as if fate itself had brought them together at the right moment, granting a meeting that could not have been predicted. But Erica didn't hide her irritation. She was irritated that Lydia was keeping silent about the details. She wanted to hear the whole romantic story in its entirety, without omissions or hints. Essentially, Erica was trying to create discord between Lydia and Ivan, looking for any way to put a wedge in their relationship and test the strength of their mutual feelings. Ivan, as if responding to Erica's hidden attempts, asked how else fate could have brought them together so accidentally, continuing to closely observe Lydia and her reaction. Lydia refused to reveal the details, embarrassed by what happened in the past, considering it shameful and pointless to discuss, preferring to keep the secret to herself. Then he presented her with a candy, and Lydia was amazed by the unexpected attention, not expecting such a simple but touching gesture. She asked him in surprise where he got these sweets, and he replied that they always appeared at the right moment, especially when she showed displeasure. Ivan seemed to enjoy seeing Lydia happy, especially when she took the sweets with a slight smile, which made him feel thoughtful and tender. Erica immediately declared that she would like the same candy, showing her desire to be on par with her sister. He clarified in what sense she meant this, as if checking her true intentions and motives behind the request. Erica explained that her sister thinks she's not serious about sweets, but she loves candy too, and wants to get her share of the fun. Ivan, taking into account his words to Lydia, realized that if he gave one candy to her, then he should have something else for Erica, in order to maintain fairness. But the gentleman sternly declared that Erica could not be allowed to have the sweets, introducing a rule that immediately changed her mood. Erica's expression immediately changed, and her joy turned into confusion and slight resentment, not understanding the reasons for such a strict ban. He explained that his fiancée did not allow him to share, and he was obliged to obey her will, showing respect for Lydia and her boundaries. Lydia was shocked by what she heard and did not expect such an open and direct confession in Erica's presence. Feeling a mixture of surprise and awkwardness, she couldn't help but feel a surge of indignation inside her, thinking that he was saying strange things that would normally seem absurd, but now made sense and belonged to her. He showed complete trust in Lydia, hoping that with time, Erica would also be able to open up, because mutual openness was the foundation of their relationship and an important part of the future. Erica watched them from afar and felt an inner horror, not understanding what this unexpected closeness between Lydia and Ivan would lead to, and how their relationship would change. Ivan calmly explained that they should be alone, avoiding unnecessary explanations, since a private conversation was important for discussing things that should not be revealed to others. They left together, leaving behind a slight tension, but at the same time, creating the feeling of a special moment that seemed significant and uniquely their own. After leaving, emotions washed over Lydia, and for the first time she felt a strange feeling, almost inexplicable, which simultaneously surprised and captivated her completely. She tried to make sense of this sudden sensation that made her heart beat faster and her thoughts become confused, as if her entire internal state had changed instantly. Lydia felt embarrassed, holding the candy in her mouth, and tried to hide the slight smile that involuntarily revealed her inner excitement in front of Ivan and the unusual emotions inside her. These new feelings were unusual, and perhaps the sweetness of the candy intensified them, making the inner tremor even more noticeable and at the same time pleasant for her. Ivan turned to her and looked at her carefully, as if trying to understand what had caused her slight joy. but Lydia assured him with her gaze that it was not laughter, but something else. He smiled softly in response, and this smile was warm and soothing, giving Lydia a light feeling of joy, peace, and that quiet harmony that she so lacked. Lydia's gaze lingered on his eyes, and her heart began to beat faster. She was delighted with this closeness, with the quiet sympathy that seemed so natural and tender. She responded with a slight smile, slightly embarrassed, because such sincere moments with a loved one were unusual for her, but at the same time touched her deep inside. She quietly admitted to herself that she was simply happy at that moment, feeling an unusual warmth and comfort next to Ivan. He had been reserved in not giving her sister the candy, which had surprised Lydia slightly, leaving her with mixed feelings between curiosity and slight irritation. Ivan noted Lydia's habit of listening to his words and monitoring his behavior, asking with a slight note of irritation how she had managed to get used to such circumstances. He felt uncomfortable with her words because they evoked strong, conflicting emotions in him that he had never expected, leaving him in inner turmoil. At the same time, he spoke sincerely, assuring that he would always listen to Lydia and take care of her sister, trying in no way to offend her. Lydia was surprised by Ivan's straightforwardness and his careful choice of words, which simultaneously caught her mind and touched her feelings, causing a slight admiration. Sometimes she watched Ivan, wondering why he was so cautious and distrustful of people, and inwardly wished that he would show more confidence and openness. He inquired what she was talking about and asked why he should listen to her words while remaining true to his habits, principles, and inner order. Lydia ran her hand lightly over his head, as if calming him down, simultaneously expressing affection, wordlessly demonstrating attention and quiet care that warmed him. Ivan watched her actions with interest and asked the reason. And Lydia explained that she was simply praising him, showing sympathy and demonstrating a tender attitude that was noticeable. She continued to stroke his hair, confirming her words through affectionate gestures, which Ivan felt with pleasant warmth, inwardly rejoicing at such attention. He suggested that Lydia might praise others in the same way, but she denied it, reserving special attention only for him, thereby emphasizing the exclusivity of their relationship. Ivan realized that these gentle touches were intended exclusively for him, which at first caused surprise, and then a slight feeling of warmth and inner peace. Lydia felt a little embarrassed, realizing that Ivan had caught on to her intentions, as she hadn't wanted it to look too revealing, but she still sincerely appreciated this moment. He asked her to respond, calling her his bride, as if he wanted to hear her consent, and at the same time, test the sincerity of her feelings, assessing her attitude towards him. Ivan noticed that Lydia herself had said that there was no need to rush into marriage, showing confidence in her reasoning and demonstrating that she did not want to give in to haste. She didn't want to let him go, feeling that their connection was more important than all the rules and conventions around her, and her heart stubbornly resisted separation, experiencing a strong attachment. All these questions caught Lydia off guard, leaving her at a loss, because no one expected the conversation to take such a personal and intimate tone. She was tormented by tension, because he stood very close to her, and his every movement seemed filled with hidden meaning and anticipation. Lydia turned away, trying to collect herself, and said that a thought had suddenly occurred to her that she thought reflected her mood. He smiled back, and that smile immediately made her embarrassment increase, because she felt an unexpected warmth and attention that she did not expect to receive at that moment. Lydia noticed that even her little pet was receiving praise, as if trying to distract the conversation from the tension and lighten the atmosphere around them a little. At first, Ivan didn't immediately understand who she was talking about, but he carefully watched her reaction, trying to catch the hidden subtext of her words and the subtle hint. She clarified that these were simply words of praise about some wonderful guy, as if hinting at the qualities that, in her opinion, are inherent in him and deserve attention. Ivan noticed that she seemed to be being teased a little, but Lydia replied that in any case, she was grateful to him because his presence had already lifted her spirits and eased her anxiety. At first, she was surprised by his sudden appearance, not expecting to see him at that moment, in such a mood and with such easy ease. But soon, Lydia was delighted, because his appearance really improved the atmosphere and dispelled some of her worries, adding confidence and lightness to her thoughts. By the way, she decided to find out what happened, because yesterday, the coming-of-age ceremony ended, and his duchy was still far away, which made everything that was happening a little strange. She thought he had already left, but Ivan forestalled her thoughts by explaining that he was staying here for now, and this statement made Lydia even more surprised and interested in his motives. This really struck her, and she wanted to understand why he hadn't left yet, trying to discern the reasons behind his sudden decision to stay by her side. The Duke remarked that Lydia looked very intelligent when she came to sign the contract, as if hinting at his impression of her maturity and ability to carry herself with dignity. Now he looked at her, wondering whether he should reconsider his decision because his feelings and respect for her had become stronger than any formal obligations and rules. He wanted to see her, so he stayed, showing that Lydia was more important to him than any distance, business matters, and official obligations, which reflected his genuine care. Ivan had no intention of leaving her alone, as if demonstrating that attention and care for her meant more to him than all the conventions and expectations of the people around him. He said this yesterday, and Lydia asked if her appearance really looked that bad, feeling doubtful and slightly self-critical about her appearance. Ivan asked what she was talking about, and Lydia explained that she meant the expression on her face, believing that it was too gloomy and serious. She explained that she considers her appearance too gloomy, and that it reflects internal tension that she hides from others. Ivan said that this was not true, and asked if she often had that expression on her face, as if trying to understand her habits and character. Lydia asked him if he was sure she didn't have a gloomy face, hoping to hear an honest and considerate answer from him. Ivan was stunned, but soon burst out laughing because her doubts and sincerity seemed both touching and funny to him. She asked him why he thought that, and was told that he simply thought she was always serious and kept her emotions to herself. Lydia could not agree with such nonsense, feeling that he was misunderstanding her and exaggerating her severity. She recalled that he himself had said that he couldn't stand the look on her face, as if it meant anything. But the gentleman explained that he meant something completely different. He was simply worried about her safety and condition, and nothing more. Hearing that she was being cared for was a bit of a surprise to Lydia, and she felt a little embarrassed, not knowing how to react. She lowered her head and smiled softly, feeling the warmth in the simple gesture, as if it conveyed something personal and soft that could not be expressed in words. Lydia mentally made it clear that he would still find someone to care for and worry about, hinting that she herself did not lay claim to his attention and care. She added that she does not consider herself a person worth spending energy or worrying about, since her life is full of its own worries and familiar rhythm. He understood perfectly well that she was just a merchant, immersed in daily affairs and worries, and no high aristocracy would make her life easier or calmer. This lowly aristocrat, earning her living and defending her place, did not deserve excessive care, as Lydia herself sometimes believed, observing his attention. They continued their conversation, and Lydia understood that he was right, because he himself saw all her daily worries, difficulties, and the responsibility that she bore every day. She inquired about the status of the upcoming coming-of-age ceremony, as gifts and monetary offerings for the people had already been prepared and were waiting for their time. At the same time, Lydia noted that Ivan is often right in various things, and helps her not just like that, but in accordance with the obligations stipulated in their contract in advance. He was fulfilling his duties, because the contract had been signed and her payments to him had already been made, so his every action was strictly connected with formal obligations. Lydia didn't understand why she had brought this up, and why she felt that these words should explain or clarify something in their relationship. He never said anything offensive to her, but it seemed as if his actions could somehow hurt her, although in fact this was not the case at all. Lydia explained that it didn't bother her at all, because she had already told herself and him that deep down she considered him an honest, noble, and decent man. After these words, he lightly poked her forehead with his finger, as if reminding her of something simple and at the same time significant, which left a warm and light feeling. Lydia didn't immediately understand what he meant, but he came closer, explaining that she thought too much, and that good deeds remained good regardless of thoughts. He suddenly touched her forehead, as if checking the child's reaction, and this gesture was both gentle and insistent, conveying concern without words, with a slight smile on his lips. At the same time, Ivan clearly showed that he did not agree with her thoughts and doubts, feeling that Lydia judged herself and her decisions too harshly, not allowing herself ease and trust. In her eyes, he now seemed almost like a little dog, trying with all his might to attract attention, conveying a simple but important idea, without pressure, softly, almost quietly. Ivan tried to hint by asking whether Lydia thought noble people would donate even one coin for the common people, reminding them of true generosity and caring. Soldiers in the north faced hunger and disease day after day, many barely surviving until morning, and this seemed completely unnecessary to anyone in the highest circles of power, where life was considered abstract. Those who ventured daily into the frigid wilderness faced danger and torment, but no one in the comfortable halls rushed to appreciate their sacrifice or show even a shred of genuine concern. The world seemed to turn a blind eye to their suffering, and the sense of responsibility for what was happening seemed distant and alien, as if the tragedies in the north were happening somewhere in a completely different life. The nobles only feigned nobility, but in reality, their actions were dictated by rumors and external effects, rather than by a sincere desire to help, more for the sake of status than for the sake of people. They were spreading gossip, and Lydia had probably already heard different stories about him, about his actions and the real feelings that were hidden behind the polite mask and conditional honesty. It is said that he received financial support and is now responsible for certain matters. But the truth is hidden deeper than it seems at first glance. In fact, all this talk does not reflect his true feelings. He is in love, and this completely changes the meaning of his actions. Lydia tried with horror to understand what exactly he meant by his words, and internally doubted her own guesses. She knew she didn't look as attractive as he thought, because she was only watching him and using situations to her advantage. Determined to change her behavior, Lydia decided to stop showing her sweet side, hoping that over time, he would lose interest. She admitted that she had done all she could, and in his eyes, it didn't really matter, even though her actions were sincere. Despite this, they were able to continue to care for each other, maintain relationships, and maintain a common attachment to the cause that connected them. He too hoped that this was exactly how it would be, and that mutual understanding would allow them not to destroy what already existed between them. Finally, he added that he saw them more as partners than just business allies, which gave their relationship a certain seriousness. Lydia, despite her words, still looked sullen, as if inner doubts did not allow her to fully believe in his sincerity. She looked up and stared straight at him, trying to catch every movement of his face and understand his true intentions. After this, Lydia extended her hand to him, demonstrating her readiness for reconciliation, acknowledging that he might indeed be right in his judgments. They shook hands firmly, as if sealing an unspoken agreement and confirming mutual respect and trust. He explained that he was saying this out of concern, to avoid another misunderstanding between them, wanting to maintain the fragile balance in the relationship. He proposed to coordinate all further actions so that there would be no accidental mistakes or misunderstandings that could separate them. Lydia thought for a moment, wondering if he could say things like that so easily without thinking about the consequences and her reaction. He reminded her that Lydia was his creditor, and if something bad happened to him, she might regret it, which added seriousness to their conversation. Lydia couldn't understand where he got such confidence in difficult moments, as if he foresaw everything in advance. Nevertheless, she decided to listen to his advice and cautious guidance. She asked him to proceed with care and caution, while acknowledging his own weaknesses, and that she herself could sometimes be a difficult and unpredictable person. Lydia decided to test his willingness to take her wishes and mood into account, asking how he would act if he had to pamper her or give in to her whims. He confidently assured her that he would do whatever she asked. She then asked him what he would do if she began to express dissatisfaction or act capriciously in his presence. Ivan explained that he relied solely on her trust and understanding, even in moments of doubt or irritation, staying close and supporting her without asking anything in return. At first, Lydia didn't immediately grasp the meaning of his words, but gradually they made her think about how open she herself was to him and how ready she was to trust him without fear. He gently reminded her that she hadn't even invited him to her coming-of-age ceremony, and that this had left a feeling of hurt, unspoken words, and a little distance between them. Moreover, all this time she kept herself at a certain distance, not allowing him to get completely close, although he expected more frankness and trust from her. He regretted the current situation, realizing that the missed moments created a barrier between them that needed to be overcome so that their future relationship could develop without obstacles. When he spoke about this, his embarrassment was noticeable. He did not even think that such words could upset her, and this was reflected in his indecision. His discomfort was obvious, but Lydia quickly reassured him, telling him everything was fine, with just a small smile to ease the tension. Despite his embarrassment, he had come specifically to see her. And now, after their conversation, it was time for him to leave, leaving behind a slight feeling of surprise. Lydia was struck by how abruptly he left the room. His quick movements and calm determination made her look at him in an unexpected way. Before leaving, he said that they would meet again later, leaving hope for a new meeting and a slight anticipation in Lydia's heart. He promised that he would write to her quite often, and this promise caused mixed feelings in Lydia, joy and slight anxiety at the same time. Then he took a strand of her hair in his hands, lightly wrapping his fingers around it, as if trying to remember this moment forever. Lydia studied her hair closely, feeling a slight warmth, as if invisible threads connected her to something important. The connection seemed especially tangible, as if it spoke of impending change. She remembered that she was now the one determining her own actions. Every action and every choice would have meaning, forming new connections that could not have been foreseen in advance. That evening, Lydia was alone in her office, completely immersed in documents. The paperwork demanded attention and meticulous attention. Every detail could impact her plans and decisions. In the midst of her work, a soft knock was heard. The butler entered the room, breaking her concentration, and announced that he had come with important news that could not be postponed. Lydia allowed him in, and the butler politely handed him some papers from the Information Guild. The documents promised to be useful for current affairs and helped keep the situation under control. She accepted them gratefully, but noted that they were no longer so necessary. She had already studied much of what was there herself and systematized it in her memory. The butler added that he had brought a blanket along with the documents, showing concern for her comfort. The upcoming cold weather required careful attention to the warmth and comfort of her chambers. Lydia was genuinely grateful for such care. She hugged the blanket, feeling the warmth that warmed not only her body, but also her soul, bringing peace and tranquility amidst her busy schedule. The butler noted that winter was approaching, and it was important to wrap up warm to avoid catching a cold and feel comfortable even on cold days. Lydia wrapped herself in a soft blanket and returned to the documents, immersing herself in her work, feeling the warmth and comfort around her. He added that in addition to the documents, there are letters, and recalled that a recent heavy snowfall blocked roads, which delayed the delivery of some messages. Lydia noted that this is all quite normal for the local climate, and perceives such phenomena as a natural part of life. The butler asked with surprise how she knew about these events, because it seemed that she was already aware of all the latest news and events. Lydia inquired about her grandfather's condition, noting that she was trying to control everything, and that he and his friend were already working on this issue. She emphasized that it didn't matter what might happen now, because she had organized an escort to look after her grandfather and ensure his safety. At the moment, you can rest assured that your grandfather is definitely fine, but this is only a temporary measure and does not replace constant care and monitoring. Lydia understood that she needed to find reliable people who could constantly be with her grandfather and take care of him, ensuring his complete safety. It was then that she realized that the distribution of the Grand Duchy's budget had changed slightly since the contract was signed, and these changes were noticeable upon closer examination of the figures. She carefully compared Ivan's report with the information service data, trying to understand how accurately the expenses and distribution of funds across all areas were accounted for. There were practically no differences. Ivan's report seemed even more detailed and thorough than the official data, and her confidence in this only increased. Not a penny was wasted. Everything was distributed rationally and carefully, without a hint of extravagance or oversight on the part of the Duke. Moreover, each expenditure detail was broken down separately, by territory, by soldier, and by unit, which allowed for a complete picture without gaps. How Ivan managed to do this didn't interest her. The main thing was that the results spoke for themselves and confirmed his competence. She remembered the rumors that had previously worried her, and now she realized that many of them were greatly exaggerated or had no basis at all. Rumors of his extravagance turned out to be pure nonsense, which, in fact, could not be trusted, since the actual figures and reports said the opposite. No less funny were the conversations about him liking men, since this had nothing to do with his work and competence. If the rumors about his personal life had been true, perhaps they could have been used in some way, but this only added to the doubts and confusion. Perhaps it was some kind of miscalculation, a misunderstanding, but she understood that until Ivan himself explained himself, one could only speculate. If so, then why there had been no explanation from him until now, and whether clarity should be expected in the future, remained a mystery. She remembered Erica, her twin sister, whom she had long wanted to introduce Ivan to, and the thought of this brought a slight smile and a desire to act. Lydia leaned back in her chair, trying to clear her head of unnecessary thoughts, realizing that doubts only got in the way and prevented her from concentrating on the main thing. With a jumble of thoughts in your head, you can't solve anything, and unnecessary worries only slow down your work and prevent you from concentrating on real matters. If you think clearly and without emotion, you can avoid mistakes and avoid getting burned by your own assumptions or hasty conclusions. Because this requires attentiveness. She must not forget her original goal and primary objective, to maintain sanity and control of the situation despite any distractions. Her main goal remained to protect her family at any cost, not allowing circumstances or rumors to distract her from her responsibilities and obligations. She very rarely gave any documents to Varosky, trusting him only partially, because she understood that the important things should remain under her control. At first, he did not understand what the lady wanted from him, and his confusion was noticeable until Lydia explained the essence of her ideas and plans. She said that she had come up with something unusual and brilliant that could change the situation in the empire, and she expected him to be attentive and diligent. He was slightly surprised and asked what this strange piece of paper was. trying to understand its value and how to work with it. Lydia didn't quite understand what he meant by that, but it was already clear that he had a lot of work ahead of him to bring her ideas to life. She asked how useful the public sector projects implemented by the Empire could be, and tried to assess their significance for the future. Dvoretsky thought for a moment, trying to find the right words, and tried to express his opinion, taking into account the experience and nuances that could influence the implementation of these projects. He admitted that, frankly speaking, he believes that the situation is not entirely right, and this makes him worried about the future. Lydia decided to find out the reason for his opinion, because it was important for her to understand why he saw things this way. He explained that because of the way the population is distributed, the main benefits of all projects reach only the capital, while the provinces remain almost completely ignored, as if they had been completely forgotten, and their needs remain unaccounted for. All these undertakings bring benefits mainly to the nobility and the rich, and if it happens otherwise, troubles appear from above, as if rot starts from the head, infecting the entire system from top to bottom. Laws and regulations aimed at ensuring the welfare of the provinces are created centrally and adopted by people located far from the places where real measures and decisions are actually needed. However, most of these regulations remain on paper, without being implemented, and the situation in the provinces remains virtually unchanged, leaving residents in the same poverty and without support from the authorities. The butler finally realized why people were so eager to get into their estate. Vic truly cared about the well-being of the population, and such genuine concern earned the respect and trust of even the most demanding. While other estates spent minimally on people's needs, limited to formal obligations or ignoring them entirely, here, the attention to people and the funds allocated made a visible difference. For the aristocracy, such spending seems shameful and unnecessary. They consider it terrible, but pretend that everything is fine. Lydia laughed, admitting that the situation was not just terrible, but truly extreme and difficult to justify. She added that it was disgusting, and he agreed, but reminded her that it was impossible to tell each estate exactly how to spend its funds. Then Lydia realized that the butler was indeed right in his approach, and this prompted her to new thoughts and decisions. So she came up with a completely different plan that could solve the problem without breaking the rules or causing open resistance. When the butler began to study the materials she had prepared, he was completely shocked by her courage and foresight. Lydia simply smiled, watching his bewilderment, realizing that her plan would work exactly as she intended. In her place, Ivan would probably have gone straight to the emperor and tried to negotiate directly, without thinking about the consequences. It might have worked, but Lydia knew it wasn't the best solution. It was too risky and unpredictable. She saw herself as an apostle, acting for the sake of an idea and not for direct gain, which distinguished her from most nobles. Together with others, they were involved in charity work, striving to preserve resources for human life and help those in need. Lydia skillfully used her family's resources and influence, directing them toward projects that genuinely benefited the population. Although her title as a noblewoman did not give her any special noble status, her actions worked the opposite. They earned her the trust and respect of society. At the same time, her initiatives facilitated the formation of a positive attitude towards the family in society and created a basis for supporting projects. Over time, other nobles will be forced to join her cause, seeing that it really helps people and brings respect. The butler was shocked that Lydia was willing to endure the aristocracy's resentment for her own goals, and this showed him her determination and strength of character. After the ceremony, the number of nobles friendly to Lydia increased noticeably, but she had no intention of giving in to their flattery, maintaining her own sense of proportion and independence. Someone who once provided help could become a threat the next moment. This thought made Lydia wary of any sign of friendship. She understood that it was important to show everyone that they were both giving and receiving. Otherwise, no one would understand that the rules had changed and the power had been balanced. If the nobles realize that times have changed, it will be difficult for them to resist the new conditions and move forward without unnecessary conflicts and losses. At that moment, Lydia herself felt how cold and frightening she sometimes seemed. It was no wonder that the nobles began to be cautious around her. Lately, she had often noticed how her words and actions evoked both respect and anxiety, which allowed her to keep everyone at a respectful distance. Despite this, many nobles began to trust Lydia, seeing in her not only strength, but also justice, which increased her influence in the empire. Mrs. Lydia was genuinely pleased to see how her attention and decisions gradually built trust, even if it was shown cautiously and reservedly. Trust was strengthened when Lydia remembered Ivan's face and felt a slight embarrassment, emotions that rarely showed in her stern demeanor. She couldn't understand why Ivan's image had suddenly surfaced, causing a surge of excitement, although usually such thoughts easily bypassed her mind. But thoughts about him did not leave her head, constantly returning, causing Lydia to feel a slight confusion that she had not experienced for a long time. She should have behaved with dignity and restraint, but the inner desire to be real, to be truly herself, made itself felt more and more strongly. After these thoughts, Lydia turned her gaze to the window and suddenly remembered the letter that needed to be sent urgently so as not to miss an important deadline. The butler asked in surprise to whom the letter was addressed, clearly not expecting that this would be such an important and responsible step for the lady. Lydia hesitated a little, realizing that her decision could influence the course of events, and she needed to be as precise as possible in choosing the recipient of the letter. She said that the letter should be sent to Count Namir, hoping that he would treat her initiative with understanding and attention. After some time, Lydia was already near the Count and thanked fate for the fact that he agreed to accept her investment without unnecessary doubts and hesitation. But the Count began to assert that he should be grateful to Lydia for the funds provided, emphasizing the importance of her participation in his case. After this, he asked again if she was really ready to make her investment, to make sure that her decision was not impulsive and was well thought out. Miss Lydia confirmed that she did indeed agree to participate in his research, expecting to receive 30% of the net profits, as agreed. She then suggested that the Count carefully read the agreement and sign it in order to legally secure all the agreements and terms of the transaction. However, the Count signed the document so quickly that he barely glanced at what was written, completely trusting Madame Lydia and her calculations in this matter. He immediately stood up, bowing and thanking her for the opportunity, showing respect and sincere appreciation for the step she had taken. The lady expressed gratitude for his efforts and noted how much she admired his dedication to medical research, which he carries out with full dedication. Moreover, she understood that this research promised enormous profits, and she hoped that his work would be successful and the results would meet all expectations. The butler noticed that the Count seemed to like the proposal made by the lady, and this was immediately evident from his attentive gaze and quiet smile. He was almost ready to sell his estate in order to devote himself entirely to research, since without large investments, further development was practically impossible. But he still remained a little worried and could not completely rid himself of doubts about the future of his projects, although he tried not to show it. He wondered whether this research would really bring profit, but the lady remained confident in her decisions and had no doubt that the path she had chosen was the right one. She admitted that she had experienced similar doubts before, and the butler immediately clarified what exactly she meant, wanting to understand her experience and thoughts. This confession made her tense for a moment, and the butler immediately came to her side to support her and prevent the situation from becoming awkward. She quickly said that it was nothing and not worth paying attention to, trying to bring the usual calm back into the conversation and control her emotions. Perhaps it was unknown to anyone yet, but she knew that very soon something grandiose would happen that would change the course of events and impress everyone around. She was sure that something would happen that no one could even imagine, and this feeling gave her inner strength and confidence in the future. Today's medications that people use are actually owned by the rich, as their cost is too high for ordinary people, limiting access to treatment. Most ordinary people simply did not have the means to pay for expensive medications. They were content with a cup of tea and the hope that the disease would go away on its own. If the Graf's research is successful, it will completely change the current state of affairs and create new accessibility to medicine for the majority. In this case, the situation will change dramatically, and people will have the chance to receive treatment that will become the norm, not the privilege of the rich and powerful. Drug prices will drop sharply when the mass adoption of new methods becomes a natural process, and a huge industrial market will emerge. And it is from this market that they will be able to generate approximately 30% of their profits, which will allow them to develop projects and support medical research. Dvoretsky admitted that he doesn't yet fully understand how directly helping people is connected to medical practice, as it seemed abstract and complex to him. They needed to build a reputation for their medical practice, as the welfare project would serve as a springboard and help establish it in society as a successful initiative. Then the Count will be able to fully launch his medical business, relying on his accumulated experience, the support of his mistress, and his established reputation, which will open up new opportunities. Her family's name inspired confidence, but her exploration of the world was not yet complete. If it failed, all the investments she had made in welfare and helping people would simply disappear without a trace. The lady explained that this would not be a problem, since the project is not considered an investment and does not generate direct profit, but serves only the needs of the family and the people. She had no intention of making any personal gain from this. Her goal was solely to improve the situation and support others without self-interest or self-interest. The butler was shocked by her words, but she only asked in surprise what he was thinking about, as if she didn't understand that this was a surprise to him. Perhaps she should have sent the letter in advance this time, so that everything would go smoothly, and the duchy would have time to prepare for her initiative without unnecessary worry. So she asked the butler to help her send the letter to the duchy, entrusting him with all the details so that the letter would arrive on time and without the slightest error. A few days later, the Grand Duke's mansion received news, and the butler informed the owner that a letter had arrived that required attention and a decision. The Duke assumed that it was a simple invitation and asked that the letter simply be left on the table without attaching any special importance to it and considering it a formality. But the butler clarified that the letter came from the Azaitan family, to which the gentleman immediately said that this should have been reported from the very beginning to avoid misunderstandings. The butler noticed that the gentleman did not even give him the opportunity to warn him about the contents of the letter, and this added to the tension before opening the envelope. When the Duke began to read the letter, he was shocked by its contents, because it concerned not banal formalities, but plans for the future and important family matters. The butler realized that the document contained information about the future directions of the family's affairs, and this forced him to assess the scale of Christina and her relatives' intentions. He laughed, noting that the woman was truly amazing and managed to surprise even the calmest and most reasonable people with her decisions and initiative. Dvoretsky added that recently, everyone has been talking about her family, and her actions have earned respect and interest even among those who previously remained indifferent. He heard that the family was not simply maintaining prosperity through small projects, but intended to spread its influence and assistance throughout the empire, covering a large scale. Now, Duke Ivan understood why she had decided to send the letter to him, because her goals were strategic and required the personal attention of the head of the duchy. Turetsky noted that news seemed to be reaching him extremely slowly, and such letters help speed up his understanding of the situation and the actions that need to be taken. Therefore, the lady personally sent the letter so that there would be no delays and no one could say that he was not aware of the family's plans and intentions in this matter. The gentleman became embarrassed, noting that this was obviously not an ordinary letter, and that the size and importance of the matter significantly exceeded all standard expectations. Moreover, it became clear that this was a large-scale project that required attention and a serious approach, and not just a formal response to a document. The community was astonished when the family's actions became known, as the initiative combined courage, foresight, and genuine concern for the well-being of others. However, the current state of affairs displeased many members of the aristocracy. They were perplexed as to why things were turning out this way, and they discussed it among themselves, dissatisfied with the changes. Most people still supported Lydia's family, but rumors that some aristocratic families had filed a request for a tax investigation against her caught Ivan's attention and made him think. Ivan began trying to understand what exactly motivated these families and why they were so persistently interested in Lydia's potential problems. He was curious about the motives behind their actions. He was no less surprised by why the family of Marquis Yuri, her ex-husband, was so sharply opposed to Lydia, as if there was personal animosity or hidden motives that he was not yet aware of. The butler, trying to clarify the situation, noted that in fact most families were not against it, and wondered why the gentleman was showing such interest in this matter, trying to understand Ivan's motives. Suddenly, Ivan rose to his feet, and the butler couldn't understand the reason for such haste. The atmosphere in the room grew tense, and Ivan's actions were unexpected and sudden for everyone present. He said that he urgently needed to see Lydia, explaining that his personal presence was necessary, as if something extremely important required immediate intervention without the slightest delay. Ivan's premonition was alarming, and he felt he couldn't delay. He needed to go to Lydia immediately, as if an inner voice were warning him of possible danger or a critical situation. The butler again handed Lydia a large stack of documents, full of papers and reports, which were supposed to help her understand the situation and prepare for possible inspections, while remaining as attentive as possible to all details. These documents contained a list of all the families who had expressed interest in the welfare project, with details of their participation and level of influence on the course of events, so that Lydia could see the whole picture. Information about sponsors and possible supporting projects was also included, although the documents were not yet finalized, and each item needed to be verified to be completely confident in the data. Ivan noted that despite some support, a feeling of tension arose, as if events could get out of control at any moment, and it was necessary to be prepared for the unexpected. The lady sighed, realizing the scale of the work and the number of issues that needed to be reviewed and analyzed in order to understand how all this could be organized correctly and safely. A bunch of ordinary nobles seemed insignificant compared to what Lydia had to decide, and those around her could not imagine the attention and care with which every step had to be approached. Frankly, Lydia understood that much of what happened was precisely her initiative, since people are often weak in the face of their own ambitions and fears, which allowed them to influence their actions and decisions. Instead of acting on impulse alone, Lydia did good deeds thoughtfully, understanding that every action she took had consequences and could change the way others viewed her. Many gave a little love and care to those in need, although often this was just a manifestation of their own vanity, hidden under the mask of good intentions and the desire to appear generous. This behavior allowed people to boost their egos by creating the illusion of importance, and Lydia noticed that many people were prone to such actions without considering the real benefits or consequences. Although Lydia didn't expect things to turn out this way, events unfolded at an unusual speed, and she had to adapt, making decisions that were sometimes risky but necessary. She was indeed fortunate that the situation was favorable, and she could count on the support of some influential people, which gave her the chance to act confidently and take advantage of the opportunities available. And with such widespread support, Lydia could hope that the tax investigation would go smoothly, and she would be able to maintain her position, strengthening her influence and ensuring the safety of her family and the interests of the project. They didn't do anything that could be punished or caught. Everything happened so quietly and carefully that no traces were left. The lady noted that he turned out to be right, because no one was able to interfere with their plans. They acted too carefully to be stopped. The lady said that the main task now is to choose a suitable sponsor for the future charitable foundation and begin preparations for its creation. Suddenly the doors swung open, and she and the butlers simply froze in surprise, not expecting to see anyone here at that moment. Their gazes met a familiar silhouette, which they instantly recognized, despite the suddenness of the situation and slight confusion. It turned out to be the Marquis, who noticed that they had not seen each other for a long time. His appearance was unexpected, but at the same time seemed predictable. His presence caused Lydia a slight irritation because his appearance disturbed her usual order and peace. But she understood that what was destined to happen could not be avoided, and any attempt to change the course of events was pointless. She tried to hide her emotions when he asked how she was doing and didn't want to give him a direct answer, leaving everything aside. Lydia stood up, trying to keep herself calm, and greeted him with propriety and an outward appearance of calm. She knew that sooner or later he would still show himself, show his intentions, and appear in her life again, as had happened before. He gave no advance warning of his visit, appearing suddenly, like a ghost who comes without knocking and without warning. She calmly informed them that Erica was in her room and that no one could disturb her for now, maintaining order in the house. But he immediately asked if she knew the reason why he had appeared, hinting that his visit had a certain significance. The Marquis ordered all those present to leave the room immediately, leaving them alone for further conversation. A slight awkwardness passed through the silence that fell between them, and they looked at each other carefully, assessing every movement. The lady noted that the conversation would be long and important, so it would be useful for everyone present to take a short break and step away a bit. The servant immediately nodded in agreement and left the room, leaving space for private communication between Lydia and the Marquis. The Marquis noted that her family's servants were behaving unusually energetically and unrestrainedly, demonstrating devotion and a willingness to serve tirelessly. The girl replied that her family's credo was freedom and equality for all, and their actions reflected these very principles. He began to sort through the documents on the table, and this immediately alerted Lydia. She abruptly snatched the papers from his hands, not wanting to give them up. She reminded them that they were their employees, that they were performing their duties, and that they had no right to interfere in family affairs without permission. The Marquis then noticed that she was treating him too formally and too politely, as if trying to hide her true feelings. She had no reason to show such attention to him, and she wondered what exactly he was trying to hint at by making her feel uncomfortable. Lydia felt a strange sense of déjà vu when meeting Ivan, as if she had already experienced these moments in the past, although the events were completely real. Yuri suggested that the reason for her anxiety was connected with her closeness and acquaintance with the Grand Duke, which left a deep imprint on her mind. The lady turned her back to him, trying to hide her emotions, while simultaneously thinking about how best to act in the current situation. She felt a twinge of inner unease, as this behavior was unusual for her. Usually, she smiled brightly at him, and that smile always conveyed warmth and trust. But now, there was something different about it. He tried to ignore her changes, trying to remain unperturbed, but a sudden sense of unease overcame him. He felt uneasy, as if an inner voice was warning him of something. There was no need to separate her from him by an invisible line, for he understood her feelings perfectly. He saw that love shone in her every glance and movement, and this knowledge was both a joy and a trial for him. When the aristocracy protested, she chose to issue a statement focusing on her charitable work. This move was deliberate and strategic, designed to deflect attention from personal feelings and protect her reputation. He chose to stay by her side, supporting her and monitoring her every move. Even when the going got tough, he chose to stand by her side, not allowing external circumstances to separate them. Perhaps the reason for all this was a contract between the two families, linking their interests and obligating them to certain actions. These agreements could dictate behavior and limit the freedom of choice of each. She cautiously asked if he was worried about the tax authorities interfering. Her concern and attention to detail demonstrated how attentive she was to the consequences and potential dangers. What if the investigation does come? The question hung in the air, creating a slight tension. She understood that any misstep could have consequences, and she tried to prepare for potential difficulties in advance. He merely smiled at her, as if to show that such worries were unnecessary. His gaze radiated confidence and ease, as if he saw the world without complications and was ready to face any difficulties with dignity. He noted that life rarely goes smoothly, and that the Duke truly possessed exquisite taste. These words carried a mixture of gentle irony and recognition, emphasizing his eye for detail and appreciation of quality. She objected, finding his expression too harsh, and insisted on calling him Grand Duke. But the Marquis considered such formalities absurd and unnecessary, believing that true power was demonstrated by actions, not words. She wondered what motivated her to defend a man who openly opposed the imperial family. Her inner conflict intensified as her feelings clashed with her sense of danger and her moral principles. She was shocked to learn that he was aware of the relationship between the imperial family and Ivan. This revelation shook her, forcing her to reconsider her understanding of power, intrigue, and the hidden motives that shape people's destinies. She needed to learn as much as possible, gather information, and understand the true state of affairs. Only this would give her a sense of control and the ability to plan her future actions without risking herself. Yuri seemed to her an empty vessel, filled only with outward self-assurance and vanity. His inner world proved empty, and this realization gradually destroyed all her previous illusions about him. Full of boastfulness and vanity, he ceased to be anyone significant to her from then on. She realized that his opinions and actions no longer influenced her feelings and decisions. But despite this, she spent many years at his side, observing and studying his habits, trying to understand what drove his actions and how best to protect herself from possible pain. And in the end, she knew him better than anyone else. Their shared lives and observations gave her a deep understanding of his character, his weaknesses, and the true motives he carefully concealed. He had hurt her more than anyone else. This realization made her cautious and demanding of herself, forcing her to analyze every action and carefully craft her reactions. Now she knew how to behave around him, how to remain calm and safe. This experience gave her confidence and the understanding that she was in control of the situation and her emotions. Right now, all she needed to do was feign fear. This trick was necessary to obtain the necessary information and maintain control of the situation without revealing her true intentions. He would be so pleased by her fear that he would continue talking nonstop. She hoped to exploit his self-confidence to extract maximum information without revealing her own plans. He warned her to remember his words. The imperial family and the crown prince were plotting a coup. These words left a heavy impression, reminding her of the hidden intrigues and dangers lurking behind the facade of power.